Here they come.
as we get started, I think the normal process is there's a kind of a standard opening remarks I have to make because we're holding the meeting remotely. So let me just start with that.
Hey Rob, I don't know if you're aware or not, but your video is off.
Oh, sorry.
Sundar's here.
Much better.
Better than a faceless person talking. So for everybody that's joining, Gary Trendle, our chair, is going to be joining a little bit late. So I'm Rob Benson, the vice chair of the planning board, and I'll be starting the meeting. And when Gary joins, he'll be filling back into the chair seat. But let me just get started. I'm going to read kind of a form note about conducting a meeting remotely and asking, confirming the members are in attendance. So let me get going. As a preliminary matter, this is Rob Benson, Vice Chair of the Planning Board. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Muriel Kramer.
Muriel Kramer here.
Jane Moran.
Jane Moran, present.
Mary Larson Marlowe.
Mary Larson Marlowe here.
Deb Fang Bro.
Deb Feinberg here.
Deb Feinberg. And Sundar Sivaraman.
Sundar Sivaraman present.
And Fran DeYoung.
Fran DeYoung present.
And Gary Trendle. Gary will be joining us in about 45 minutes. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative.
Hey Rob, you missed me.
Oh, sorry, Dave. Dave, can you great, thank you. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Mr. Gelsich.
John Gelsich present.
Ms. Pemberton.
Stephanie Pemberton present.
And Mr. Paradise, are you on the line?
Bill Paradise from Beta is present.
All right, great. As I'm filling in here, I'm not going to start the meeting with going over the anticipated speakers that are in attendance. Let me skip to the next part. Good evening, everybody. This is open meeting of the Hopkinton Planning Board. Is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020. Due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of COVID-19, the COVID-19 virus, in order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we are complying with the executive order that suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. All members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The executive order, which you can find posted with agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely as long as the public body makes provisions through adequate alternative means to ensure interested members of the public are provided reasonable access to the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. It will further include several public hearings. For this meeting, the planning board is convening by video conference via the Zoom app as posted on the town's meeting calendar and the board's agenda identifying how the public may join. Additionally, the meeting may also be broadcast by HCAM through one or many of its channels or platforms. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that others may be able to see you and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Meeting supporting materials and packets. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website via the web meeting calendar, unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda, unless I note otherwise. And so the meeting business ground rules. Shortly, we'll turn to the first agenda items. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will invite board members to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called further. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in dialogue with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. Not every agenda item will feature public comment. For items with public comment, after members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment as follows. All participants should use the raise your hand feature in Zoom, then wait to be acknowledged by the chair. All participants must begin by stating their name and address. Participants must limit their comments to 3 minutes or less. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. So that's the introduction. It always seems a lot less when Gary is saying it and I'm not saying it, but that's the introduction. So like I said, I'm hoping all members of the board can keep me honest and keep me on track with our agenda, but we're going to start with our administrative items. So we have 2 administrative items, Fox Hollow 203 Pond Street bond release and minutes for September 14th and September 28th and October 19th. John, to start off the meeting, do I need to open any public hearings or do I just wait till after the administrative items?
It doesn't necessarily matter because you just can't open the hearings before 7. So if you want to open them now, just so you don't forget, that's fine. Or if you want to wait until after the administrative items, that's okay too.
All right, let's start with the administrative items. So I'm not sure the best process for this, but Fox Hollow, the developer for Fox Hollow, which is 203 Pond Street, has requested a bond release. In our meeting materials, we have a kind of a itemized cost list of work performed and then outstanding work remaining. We also have a letter from or an email from Mr. Shepard, Mr. Michael Shepard, questioning the height of basically a decline or off of one of the sidewalks. So what is our process here to go through to basically discuss the bond reduction?
So Mr. Chair, I can give some background on these items if you'd
Terrific.
like. All right,
Yep,
so
that would be helpful.
the bond release is for reduction in the bond, and there was a meeting that we had at the end of the week last week with the applicant and with Beta about this bond release. The Beta has revised it, so the current version is the 1030 version. There was some misunderstandings with the calculations and other things, so the estimate originally was a lot higher, and now it's been reduced per Beta. So if you look at the 1030, it's a estimate of 134,094 left in work, and the original bond was 201, I believe. Eric Dias is the applicant, so he can speak to this as well. And Eric, jump in with anything that you want to add. So they would be looking for a release of the bond down to only holding about 134,000 left. The other part of this is Mike Shepard visited the site, and it wasn't included as part of the subdivision plans, but he's suggesting a chain link fence along the culvert that crosses that stream over there, because it's about an 8 to 10 foot drop and there's a sidewalk right next to it. So in terms of safety, he thinks it would be better to have a chain link fence so that any pedestrians walking on that sidewalk wouldn't fall into the ravine and hurt themselves. I think there was supposed to be a guardrail or some shorter barrier that's there, but this would be on top of that. So that would be a modification, and I'm going to leave it up to the board to see how they would like to handle that, whether they can determine it's a field change and there doesn't need to be a subdivision modification application submitted. If the applicant can just move forward and do that, since it's per the request of DPW and the building inspector, and they're okay with doing it, or how the board would like to handle it. The bond reduction would have to be a vote.
Okay, Mr. Diaz, would you like to make any comment? Well, first, would you like to introduce yourself and
Sure. For the record, Eric Dias, registered professional engineer with Strong Point Engineering Solutions. Here tonight representing FBC Fox Hollow, who is the current owner of the project. I think John laid it out very well. We're here for almost two separate items tonight. The first of which is a bond reduction. We have gone through the numbers with Beta. As John mentioned, we did have a Zoom meeting between John, myself, Phil from Beta on Friday. We're very comfortable with Beta's numbers, so we don't take exception to that, and we're hopeful that the board will release those funds back to us and hold, I think it's 134,000 and change left in the bond. And then the second item is that chain link fence. We don't take exception to installing that chain link fence. Truth be told, it probably should have been on the plans in the first place. It just wasn't. There is a timber guardrail that's proposed now. So as John said, this chain link fence, that, timber guardrail would be for vehicular safety. Chain link fence would be for pedestrian safety. So the chain link fence would be on top of that. So our only question then becomes, how do we get that approved? Can we just consider that to be a field change, or is that something that the board needs to vote on as a modification?
I'm looking for guidance from you, John, on that point. At first thought, it sounds like we're requesting it, and we don't want to create undue work if we can help it.
Yeah, I think it could be appropriate as a field change because it's something that the inspector on site saw in the field. Not to be too on the nose with that, but it's not something that's significant. It's not really changing the subdivision. It's not really modifying the plans that much. It's really just adding a safety measure to something that's already going to be there. There's already going to be a barrier. It's not a new barrier. It's just putting it right on top.
And so how do we kind of like ratify that in this meeting? That we want that, if we want, as a board, do we need to vote? How do we proceed to kind of make that?
I think a vote would be appropriate just because it would give a finality to the decision from the board.
So should we do that? Go ahead, Dave.
Sorry, I was just going to make a suggestion, see how it goes over. I think the chain link fence, I would like to suggest that we keep it separate from the bond. We still have a good portion of the bond left, and just to have the developer do that on a good faith effort. And I would suggest just voting the bond release as it is.
They would be two separate items.
Right. Can I
The chain link,
suggest?
sorry, the chain link fence is not related to the bond.
Right.
Okay,
So
can I make
do we have to vote on that chain link fence? I don't think so, right?
Yes.
It would be best to do so since it's a
Okay.
decision by the board.
So Rob, I'll make a motion that we approve the installation of a chain link fence as described and requested by the building inspector for safety purposes along that ravine.
Second.
Second that motion.
Terrific. Is there any further discussion? All right, let me go through roll call here. Dave, Paul?
Just one quick discussion before we start. Would the wood barrier be on the inside of the fence, or how would that work? Do we know?
So I think the way that this would work out is that the wood barrier would have to be on the inside of the fence, and the fence would probably ride on top of the cement head wall that's there for the culvert.
So through the chair, would it go street and then the barrier, then the fence?
I believe that is the way it would have to go in this case. I believe.
And there's a sidewalk in between, and that's the impetus for this whole thing is on that side of the street, there's a sidewalk. On the other side of the street, there's not. So they're not suggesting a fence on the other side of the street, just the one that pedestrians will be traversing.
So I'm clear with that. Thank you.
Did Mike Shepard talk about the length of it, or whether it should be angled, or what the requirements would be for the most safe placement?
I believe, if I may, my understanding from reading Mike's email is that he wanted it to run along the slope as well. So because you have two different sections there. You have one section where you're on top of the culvert crossing, and there's an abrupt, just a drop off down to almost the ravine. But then on either side of that, where the sidewalk's going to go, you have a pretty steep slope that's there. So what I would envision is that chain link fence would run on top of the concrete, the main crossing, and then down the wing walls that's there as well.
Right, that's what Mike suggested, going down the abutments.
We modify the motion to include the extension going down not only across the concrete, but down the sloped
The
abutment.
motion references as described in Mike Shepard's email, so I think that's covered.
Okay,
Deb, it does say down the abutments as well.
okay, terrific.
Is there any more discussion, or are people comfortable voting on the motion as described? All right, let's, did you have any comments, Deb?
No, I just said I was. I'm comfortable.
Okay, great. Dave Paul,
Dave Paul, yes.
Mary Larson Marlowe,
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Deb,
Deborah Feinberg, yes.
Muriel,
Muriel Kramer, yes.
Sundar,
Sundar Sivaram, yes.
Fran,
Fran DeYoung, yes.
Jane,
Jane Moran, yes.
and Rob Benson is yes as well. So that passes. Let's go to item number 2 here, the bond reduction. So the original bond, I think, was 211,000, was it?
201.
201, and this is the developer has worked with Beta, and work completed so far is 67,000 roughly, and there's $134,000 worth of work remaining.
That's correct.
And just for my my benefit, how is that amount calculated with current rates of construction? Is it agreed upon between you and Beta, or how's the amounts calculated?
So in Phil, I'm sure from Beta can speak to this as well, but we had actually originally asked for a little bit more money back than this. I think we asked for roughly $110,000 back. And the Beta calculation correlates unit costs relative to DOT's most recent costing analysis, which accounts for inflation year to year. So certainly the inflation from 2016, when the bond was originally calculated, to now, which is where we ended up, requesting a little bit, accepting a little bit less back than what we had originally requested.
And Phil, do you have any other comments?
No, Eric is correct. We always price these kind of projects as if the town had to build them, which includes public bid process and prevailing wage and all the things that typically Mass Highway has to deal with. So we use their prices. And so as part of this review, we updated the prices to reflect today's prices.
So I don't know, how does the board feel? Is there any questions for the developer or for Phil regarding this? All right, then go ahead, Fran.
To the chair, Rob. Yeah, just one question, maybe back for Eric. What is your anticipated completion date on the project? And would you anticipate coming back in front of the board again for an additional reduction? Or would you anticipate the next time you come in front would be for, work completed 100% and just the remaining amount on the bond requested back?
Yeah, my expectation would be that the next time we appear before the board would be for final as-built, and asking for the entirety of the bond back at this point. Of course, my client may have another idea, but I think it would make the most sense to just see it through from this point forward. As far as completion dates, so we're currently working, we've got 4 lots left to construct out there. 2 of them are currently under construction and 2 of them are getting ready to go under construction. All the permits exist. And we should be breaking ground on those hopefully springtime at the latest. So once those lots are done, we'll course pave the road and come back. I think we realistically like to get out of town come spring, summer of 2021.
Very good. Thank you.
Any other members of the board?
Yeah, I have a quick question. This is probably for John. It strikes me as a little atypical that we're considering a bond reduction when the project is still in mid-swing. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, and for a small amount, but the work that they're requesting back has been completed, so it's within their right to request that money back.
What is the amount, the actual amount that we're requesting back?
I don't know the actual amount they're requesting back, but they're requesting that the bond be reduced to $134,094. So just
67,000, right?
that'd be about
$67,000.
$67,000.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve the applicant's request for a return of $67,000 on their bond, leaving 134, and is there some change?
$134,094.
$134,094 held in bond.
Second that motion.
Any discussion? So we're going to conduct a roll call vote. Dave Paul,
Dave Paul, yes.
Mary Larson Marlowe,
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Deb,
Deborah Feinberg, yes.
Muriel,
Muriel Kramer, yes.
Sundar,
Sundar Sivaraman, yes.
Fran,
Fran DeYoung, yes.
Jane,
Jane Moran, yes.
and Rob Benson is a yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for your time. We appreciate it.
Good luck.
Thank you.
See you in the summer.
Yes, sir.
All right, so we're moving right along here. I'm thinking the minutes should be approved separately, or we should discuss the minutes one by one.
We only have one set, I think, is that
So
right?
let's start with
Correct.
the minutes for,
We only have September 14th, Rob.
They were, I looked again and I thought the same thing, but you kind of scroll down and they're
Oh,
on the end.
No, only the September 14th minutes were released.
yeah.
Oh, I saw them. I saw the other ones somewhere. I don't have them open at the moment, but
So I did see them late, and I sent some corrections to Stephanie. I just wanted to make sure you understood them, Stephanie. Did you get my email?
Yes, I did, Muriel.
Okay. So, and I'll ask the board this for the section on the public hearing for 114 Pond Street. If you'll remember, that is the driveway, the scenic road driveway, that there was some question whether the DPW would approve the driveway and the location the first time they came. And I think that the last sentence in that first paragraph suggests that concerns were from the Conservation Commission, but I don't remember concerns from the Conservation Commission. I think the concerns were that the DPW might not be able to issue a driveway permit. Is that correct, John?
Yes, that was a concern.
Okay, I think that, I don't remember anything from the Concom, so I think that that's what should be in that paragraph.
So I think the confusion with Concom is they thought there may have been buffer area that crosses the street or riverfront area that crosses the street. But I don't think that was.
I don't
was ever
remember that,
determined.
but that doesn't, yeah, I don't know. But so the sentence is, the acting tree warden was reluctant to offer a recommendation to cut the trees in the case that the driveway must be moved as there are concerns from the Conservation Commission. But I thought the concerns were that he wasn't sure he'd be able to approve it.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
That specific sentence was for the DPW.
Okay, all right. And then the last sentence or the second to last sentence in the fourth paragraph, I just think it needed to have a word. Mr. Westerling stated the applicant's reluctance to move the driveway to a safer location was the issue, or something like that, in his opinion. And then I have a question. Is it swept path analysis, or is it an acronym, SWEP? SWEPP.
It's a good question, Muriel.
I
Saw
think
Chief on here before. He could be the one to answer that.
I think it's swept, but Chief is here somewhere. Maybe he's getting his dinner or something. He's not. Oh, there he comes.
Phil's probably the expert, but I believe it is swept path analysis.
With a T.
Yes.
Okay. So I just highlighted a couple places where that needs to be changed, Stephanie. Otherwise, excellent job.
Okay. With the,
So Stephen, when you're doing that, it's a sweep path analysis and then afterwards it's swept?
I'm gonna.
Stephanie, do you understand the changes Muriel's requesting?
Yes, I do.
So I'll
All right.
make a motion to approve the minutes as corrected.
So moved.
Sundar Shivaraman seconded.
Great. We're gonna go through a roll call vote unless there's any, is there any discussion on the minutes?
No, I just wanted to clarify that when I was scrolling through, it was the minutes that we approved that I got a little confused with. So it's all clear now, though.
Okay. Thanks, Deb. Let's go through the roll call vote here. Dave Paul,
Hey, Paul, yes.
Mary Larson Marlowe,
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Deb,
Deborah Feinberg, yes.
Muriel,
Hero Kramer, yes.
Sundar,
Sundar Shivaraman, yes.
Fran,
Randy Young, yes.
and Jane.
Jane Moran, yes.
And Rob Benson's a yes. So the minutes for September 14th are approved. So next up on our agenda, we have items 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, which are all public hearings. I think I would like to go to the take the approach of opening the public hearings all at once and voting once. What's the best way to can I just entertain a motion?
I'll move that we open the public hearings.
I'll make a motion. I'll second.
Okay, so there's a motion to open all the public hearings on the agenda that's been seconded. So by roll call vote, we're gonna move forward here. Dave Paul,
Hey, Paul, yes.
Mary Larson Marlowe,
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Deb,
Deborah Feinberg, yes.
Muriel,
Hero Kramer, yes.
Sundar,
Sundar Shivaraman, yes.
Fran,
Randy Young, yes.
Jane,
Jane Moran, yes.
and Rob Benson's a yes. So without Gary here, we'd like to do a couple things. Some people may not be super excited by this, but a couple things out of order to until Gary gets here. Gary should be joining before 8 o'clock, but since I've been chairing the public hearing for Deer Ridge Estates and Lincoln Street, I was hoping Courtney Dadarian and Joe Marquardt were on the call now, and we could take this out of order unless there's any anyone on the board has any issues with that.
See Courtney, but, oh, there's Joe.
So Rob, I'll
Courtney-
just remind
ahead,
you
Mary.
that I'm gonna go off camera and mute because I am recusing myself from this one.
Okay.
So are we discussing the Lincoln Street, Cedar Street? Is that the first one?
Yep, it's number 4 on our agenda, but we're going to discuss
Okay.
that first.
Okay,
Courtney,
got it.
Joe, I see Shane as well. Are you guys all prepared to go at the beginning here?
Yes, sir.
Great. So the outcome of the last meeting was there was some concern over the length of extending the length of Lincoln Street. I know for myself personally, as one member of the board, I wanted to see if fundamentally the equivalent project could be done from just the Cedar Street extension side. And I know you have come back with a kind of a proposal and a couple options. And if you could update the board on where you are, what the proposal is, and then maybe we can provide some feedback.
Rob, before we get started, do you have some kind of feel what amount of time we want to spend on this?
Right now, it's I know Beta hasn't had a chance to review these proposals, at least to my knowledge. So we had budgeted about give or take 15 minutes.
Okay, thanks.
Really, to go to the next step, I think we need Beta to review, but hopefully we can get an update on the project, and then we can maybe give some thoughts.
Great, thank you.
Should I start?
Yeah, sure. Is Courtney, are you starting, or is Joe who's leading here?
I'll start, Rob. Courtney.
Great, thank you.
Of course. So we want to thank the members of the planning board for taking our past proposal into consideration, for giving us an opportunity to improve on those plans. We have taken your feedback very seriously. Over the past 2 weeks, we have worked tirelessly to come up with a more suitable plan for your vision of what is which is appropriate here in Hopkinton. We have consulted with Fire Chief Slayman and would appreciate if he has a moment tonight to express his thoughts on our new proposals. We have discussed our proposals with Police Chief Bennett. We have met virtually with HALT to make sure that the project still encompasses their values and maximizes open space for the good of the community. And would appreciate it if we could hear their thoughts on the proposals this evening as well. We are presenting to you 2 sets of plans that reflect changes suggested in regards to cul-de-sac, road lengths, and most importantly, safety. Plan A positions a majority of lots on the new road that will develop off of Cedar Street Extension, not to surpass 1,000 feet. 2 lots are also placed in what would become a cul-de-sac at the end of Lincoln Street. Plan B puts all lots on the new road that will develop off of Cedar Street Extension at a length of 1,159 feet. Lincoln Street will not accrue any additional house lots. However, we will add around 100 feet of road to create a cul-de-sac for safety purposes only, in an attempt to improve the road and create a way for trash trucks, emergency vehicles, school buses, etc., to turn around. With both plans, we will install cisterns at the discretion and under advisement of the town that will service the new road in all of Lincoln Street. We will also commit to sprinkler all of the new homes that are built. We've adjusted from 8 lots to 9 lots in each of these plans. To make improving Lincoln Street financially feasible, we needed to add additional lot to cover expenses. Both new designs also adjust the position of the Lincoln Street cul-de-sac in response to our neighbor, Priya's concerns of headlights shining into her home. We hope that you find these new plans to be more in line with the needs of the community.
Thank you, Courtney. Thank you for that update. John, is it possible to show the plans?
Yep, let me share my screen. Can you all see that?
Yep. So on both sets of plans, you have Cedar Street Extension coming from the left side of the page, and Lincoln Street is coming from the right side of the page.
For the chair, just a suggestion. I think the color plans might be a little bit more. I don't know. Just a suggestion.
I don't think we have color plans of these updated drawings.
Okay, I might be looking at the old ones.
So in both of these sets of plans, there's no so the original, just I think for the boards, just so we can kind of level set the board, the plans that were discussed at the last meeting was putting 4 houses on the new road off of Cedar Street extension, and 4 houses extending Lincoln Street and putting 4 houses, and basically having an emergency access with a gate through it. And these plans are just 2 are cul-de-sacs at either end, and there's no interconnectivity between the 2 roads.
Correct.
Correct. I would agree with that.
Is there questions from the board that they would?
Yeah, sorry, through the chair. Could the plans be zoomed in to show? So I think a mention was made of a new cul-de-sac off of Lincoln Street, which would serve purely as a turnaround for, I think, trash truck as well as potentially fire truck. Could that be shown, please?
So while he's
So-
doing that through the chair, Dave,
Yes.
I do have a concern with not having the emergency access road, because, I mean, to address the issue of if a down tree falls at the beginning of the cul-de-sac, how would emergency vehicles get to the cul-de-sac itself? And I'd like to hear whether the emergency services of the town feel the same way or not. But I do want to thank the applicant for working with us and coming back with 2 plans. I'm not trying to put a stop to it. I'm just concerned about the emergency access.
Chief Slayman, are you able to comment? The general high level question is from a public safety point of view, is these plans that have fundamentally any one of the 3 plans can result in 2 cul-de-sacs. So I think last week or 2 weeks ago we were kind of hung up on could a single dead end road cul-de-sac off of Cedar Street extension accommodate all those houses? But now it's very clearly shown there's these plans that the house lots can be accommodated off of just making a new road off of Cedar Street extension. But from a public safety, is it better to have that fire road, like that kind of emergency access? I'm assuming yes.
So there's a couple elements that you're talking about. I kind of refer back to the town bylaws. You know, it's 500 feet for a standard development, 1,000 feet when you have the open space. And then it has to do with like the length of the driveways that fit on that development. And I talked to Courtney about this, a shorter driveway. So then we're trying to assess the risk of all the elements. It's like Dave Paul said, a perfect world is we can access from 2 directions, but our town bylaws allows for cul-de-sacs in certain conditions. So the way I'm doing this risk assessment with Courtney is shorter driveways, the blocked road. We have a life safety residential sprinkler system in place that protects them in their home so they can get out of their home if there's a fire. It's a little easier for us to get somebody out, say manually if they need an ambulance, but we can't get equipment in if the road is blocked. But again, there's a whole bunch of scenarios in between there, and it's not a perfect calculation. So I kind of look to the planning board to assess whether, we start from, can we have a road that has access from 2 directions? And if we can't, these are like the safety precautions that we put in, and it kind of matches up with our town bylaws. So I don't like to tell you yes and no. I like to try to work with you to get to yes if there's something that can be done. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
Through the chair?
Was that Mary?
Yes, this is Mary.
Yep,
So
go ahead.
I have a question. How long are the cul-de-sacs off of Cedar Street in these two concept plans, A and B?
The scenario on the left, 1,000. On the right, 1,159.
Okay, thank you. And just a comment, back to Dave, I actually, I'm relatively comfortable what with the sprinklers being in place and shorter driveways, that there isn't an emergency access road between the two cul-de-sacs. So, I'm relatively comfortable with that option.
Through the chair,
Yes, Fran.
Rob. So I think this question is probably directed to Mr. Mark Wadant. Joe, on the option A, where the Cedar Street extension cul-de-sac would be, I believe, just under 1,000 feet. You're proposing also Lincoln Street is it to extend a certain distance and then add a cul-de-sac at the end of it, or just add the cul-de-sac at the end and not extend the street?
With the 1,000-foot cul-de-sac, we felt that it had real value to extend Lincoln Street, get those two house lots for density issues, but then be able to preserve some open space. With option B, the slightly longer cul-de-sac, we do have a turnaround at Lincoln Street, solves many of the issues that were enumerated last time by the residents of Lincoln Street, but takes away some of that open space that's in there. So it really comes down to, in my mind, making a choice. The open space, does it have real value there at Lincoln Street? And then do you balance that with the length of the roadway?
Got it. And approximately how far are you looking to extend Lincoln Street in option A?
I believe it's 185 feet from the boundary line.
Through the chair, get a minute, Rob.
Go ahead, Dave.
So for the benefit of discussion, I'm going to call the original Plan C. Hopefully that's okay. To me, Plan C seems the safest, and I don't know what we're achieving by Plan B or Plan A. But Plan C, I mean, I'm going to use the worst case scenario of a tree down at the beginning of the cul-de-sac and somebody has a heart attack in the cul-de-sac. So what do you do to get that person out? You're going to walk them down the street? We have two forms of egress as a big thing. The cul-de-sac is pretty much an exception to that. That's why we try to limit the size of it, but that's not the ideal solution. So just my opinion, I'm going to push for option C. Does anybody have input about why these are better, why these are safer?
Through the chair,
Sure, Mary, go ahead.
unless there's somebody else who hasn't spoken yet. Okay. I like the fact that on the new concept plans A and B, that the length of each cul-de-sac is kept as close to or under 1,000 feet if possible. I think that we've been going the direction in this town of waiving and giving the possibility of having much longer cul-de-sacs in general, or fairly often, I should say. And I think that's a dangerous precedent. I have a question in terms of the two different. Well, we could list all three of the A, B, and C, C being the original. How many residences would be on each street in the different options? I'm asking particularly because of Lincoln Street, not knowing the number of residences on the street right now. And, one of the plans, or two of the plans add houses to that street as well. So whoever can answer that, I don't know.
I believe there are 12 homes right now on Lincoln Street.
Okay.
So Plan C would put us at 16, Plan A would put us at 14, and Plan B would not change that number.
Okay, we'd keep it at 12. Okay.
Yes.
16, 14, and 12. And then the other street, the other new cul-de-sac would have 9 or I think 7.
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
or 4 if you entertain Plan C.
Okay, 4 and Clancy. Got it. Thank you.
Okay, so let me just try to summarize some some things. So we obviously have our bylaws in place. We're trying to adhere to the bylaws the best we can as a planning board. And there's some leeway for kind of extenuating circumstances to over basically at the planning board's discretion to approve certain projects. And so let me just go through kind of some option A here extends, basically keeps the road off of Cedar Street 1,000 feet, and it improves Lincoln Street with a cul-de-sac, but it also extends it 185 feet. And so it put 7 houses off of Cedar Street and bring the house count on Lincoln Street to 14. So option B, the cul-de-sac off of Cedar Street Extension is 1,159 feet, I think, and there's a bulb of some length to make a cul-de-sac off of Lincoln Street. So there's no new houses on Lincoln Street, and it's 9 houses off on the new road off of Cedar Street Extension. Option C is extending Lincoln Street the most. I think I forget the exact distance, but maybe a couple hundred feet. And having 4 houses off of the new road and 4 houses added to Lincoln Street Extension. The benefit with option C is there is kind of interconnectivity. So this is just me as a single member of the planning board, but there's interconnectivity of the community. There's the ability to walk into Highland Park. There's the ability to jog into Highland Park. There's the ability to kids to ride bikes, whereas it's really cut off by kind of 85 right now. It's cut off from all of those other aspects, where if there was some way to interconnect them to other parts of the community, I think I just want to make that statement and see if the other planning board members had other feelings of like where they would really go or what they would advise the applicant.
But just so I understand through the chair, I think you're suggesting that option C connects the community, so because it allows folks
Yes.
on Lincoln Street to get to Highland Park, and that's not something I thought about, but that supports it more as well. So thank you for that input.
Yeah, the big thing I was hung up on last meeting was could a similar project be developed off of Cedar Street Extension, and I think a similar project can be developed. So I don't think the housing density is going to change much. I do think there's some potential public safety benefits, and maybe we need some more diligence on that with of having a emergency access way. But I do think interconnectivity of the residents is important. So I wanted to see what other members of the board thought.
Through the chair, if I may.
Sure.
I think residents expressed concern about Lincoln Street being a narrow street, and the concern was the potential through traffic. If
there's not going to be through traffic, there'd be a path that would be gated, but people could walk or jog.
Okay, what
ride
I
their
think we had
bikes.
proposed, in case we connect Lincoln and Cedar, if that was the primary goal that we were trying to achieve here, wasn't that one of the aims that we were saying that both from a fire safety perspective, it would make sense to have was that maybe I'm missing something here. So was Dave, was our plan originally to say it should be a through street so that you would have two forms of egress for fire safety reasons. Is that
Through the
not
chair,
what
I'd like to
is-
make that suggestion as being option D and just Rob can,
okay.
Rob can speak to it as well.
Okay,
but I
then I'm
think we
not gonna
kinda-
So
go- sorry.
Sundar, we've never proposed a through
Okay,
street.
got it.
That's
Got
not
it.
on the-
Got it.
on the docket.
Got it. Got it.
It was right, it was never on
okay.
the table.
Through the Chair,
Okay.
wasn't it against the neighbors on Lincoln Street not to have a throughway street
Right. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Then my confusion. I apologize. So
narrow
okay.
of a road?
Yeah,
Got it. Got it.
Came up with
Through the
the
chair.
fire lane.
yes, sorry, Jane. Through the chair, just to sort of jump in here, I think the fire road was sort of the connection between the two, which you were talking about, Rob.
Which would provide walking connectivity between the two, basically fundamentally walking connectivity between the two neighborhoods.
I wonder if somehow the plans could be manipulated, either A or B, to include a fire road without, impinging upon the lots too much. Is that possible, Joe?
I'll be honest, we have not reviewed that at all with what we've done so far, so I hate to comment.
Okay. I just think.
Kind of a fresh idea, obviously.
I really think it's just the overall A and B are light years away from where we were before. I think it's really good progress. I definitely was going out of the meeting last week or last time with thinking that just Lincoln Street needed a dead end for safety considerations. So I really appreciate that being included there. So then my other question was, if we did extend it for the Lincoln Street for the two houses, that would require two waivers, wouldn't it? Or is it sort of a subtle innuendo that Lincoln Street with the singular turnaround would also require a waiver? So we would be requiring a waiver and B, we'd be requiring two waivers where A would just be requiring the waiver for Lincoln Street because we're extending it further where the other one meets the 1,000-foot requirement.
John, maybe you can help clarify this, but like option B, which has no new houses off of Lincoln Street, but just has a cul-de-sac. I think all members of I'll speak for myself, but that is just it's a better situation than Lincoln Street has today. Like not having any way for a large vehicle to turn around is just not a great situation. So even option B, would that require a waiver by the board to say the street is now going to be, I don't know, 25, 50 feet longer?
For Lincoln Street, you mean?
Yeah.
Yes. It's extending a dead end road.
Yeah. So my personal opinion is having a cul-de-sac there is an improvement for the town. It's improvement for public safety. It's an improvement for just basic services, trash pickup, all those types of things. So I guess my point is in this case, like a waiver for extending the street to make an improvement like that, I think is something that is a good thing. And I don't have much concern over the length of the extension. Whether it's just 50 feet or in this case, you can really get hung up by the number of feet of the extension, but to me personally, it doesn't
So through the chair,
bother me to extend it.
I support you and concur as well. And if there was required, as John said, if it does require a waiver, to me, I'm going to approve it. It's no big deal. It helps.
I agree with the observations too, Mr. Chair. I think Plan B definitely makes a material impact to Lincoln Street, where people are facing hardship. The school bus situation as well as fire safety and trash pickup. Yeah.
Through the chair. Gary Trindle has his hand raised.
I haven't been, the view I have, okay, Gary, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I apologize to be a little late to the discussion, but I just want to echo a couple of things. But going back to Rob's comment about the connectivity that comes with having an emergency access connection, and I agree with Rob that I think that pedestrian and bicycle neighborhood connectivity is really important. I think that's in line with our master plan. But I'd also argue that there's a big safety improvement if it connects. And my question for the applicant is that in Plan C, which is the original plan, you had a total of 8 lots. And in Plan B that you're showing today, you have a total of 9 buildable lots. And if I look at one of those lots, if you were to remove that, then that would give you the ability to put that emergency access road, which I think does a lot to improve the safety situation. It provides that neighborhood connectivity, and it still gives you the same number of buildable lots as what you had originally proposed. So at that point, to me, there's 2 things we would be waiving. One, we would be waiving the dead-end street length on Lincoln Street, which I think, to the points made earlier, is very reasonable. I personally could get behind that. And then secondly, we'd have to waive the length of the dead-end street off of Cedar Street extension because it'd be slightly more, but that becomes a little bit easier for me to process or digest personally when there is that emergency road connectivity between them. And again, I'm looking at it, you're still getting 8 buildable lots there. So that's my take on it. And realize that we're probably doing a lot of designing here, which maybe we shouldn't be doing, but in general, I feel like there's this way to still get 8 lots. Avoid adding houses and substantial length to Lincoln Street. I think to me that's something that I could that I could get comfortable with.
Quick comment for the chair, please.
Yeah, we
Real quick.
only
real
have
quick.
another few minutes,
Real
but
quick.
yes, go ahead, Dave.
That's good thinking, and I would support any of the plans that has a access road.
I am of the kind of similar mindset that I think as a community, there's some things that just being able to be connected to your community by walking or jogging or biking is there's real value there. So I tend to agree.
So through the chair, if I may, Rob, I do have one concern about option B, and that's extending the dead-end road more than 1,000 feet. Maybe I just have missed what's the material need to extend it and ask for that waiver. Is there any way to redesign that in such a way that we wouldn't necessarily need a second waiver on option B to go beyond 1,000 feet? I really would like to stay within the kind of purview of what the bylaws state, unless there's some really extenuating circumstances that maybe I've just overlooked.
So you'd like to see, so just for clarification, you'd be willing to add a cul-de-sac to Lincoln Street because it betters the street, but you'd like to keep the Cedar Street extension side to 1,000 feet or less.
Within the structure of the bylaw, correct.
Okay.
It's a fair point. I would support that as well.
Chief Slayman, please.
Just part of the discussion that I saw with this extension, I understand the theory that extra 137 feet or whatever it is, but from a design, there was several driveways when it was 1,000 feet that were much longer, and that just creates its own little challenge for us as a fire service. We can have the road that's open, and then I got a driveway that's 400 feet and blocked. So we're trying to balance a few of those things. So just if you can just put that in your conversation going into the next meeting.
Thank you, Chief.
Does everybody understand that on the board, that it sounds like they could have kept the Cedar Street side under 1,000 feet, but it makes the driveways long and that causes other problems? All right, so I'm not sure how to wrap up our feedback here to Courtney and Joe, but we only allotted 15 minutes and I think we've gone a half hour.
Can I?
Do you have any questions for the board?
I do have one more question. We do feel as a group that we've kind of come to the board now with our original plans, which I think we're calling C this evening, that the board had some major concerns about. We, in the last 2 weeks, have now come up with 2 sets of other plans that we're presenting. We'd really like for the board to commit to us a direction to go with, because we'd really like to move from our concept to our definitive plan soon. Is that fair?
That is a fair request. How does the board feel about taking a straw poll to just say which of the options, which one they would like to see put forward? And you can for argument's sake, let's call any option that has emergency access. Let's just say that's C, and we can maybe provide and then add comments if you want. Have any street length feedback?
I don't know if that's going to help them, Rob. They're looking at A, B, or C being defined as they are, I think.
I think you're right.
No changes.
Okay, well, let's go around and give them the best your opinion of what you'd like to see put forward. Gary,
Just one more quick comment before we go around. Quick
Sure.
comment. So I agree with Courtney that it would be good to know, but we're kind of, people like different pieces of A and B. So it's almost like if we want an access road, you're forcing us to commit to C. So that's the point I wanted to make.
understood. Thanks, Dave. So Gary, are you able to give some thoughts?
I can give some thoughts, but I'm not comfortable with any of them as they currently stand, and I apologize to be difficult, but I think there's still some work to do on the design front. I share a lot of the comments that were made tonight. I do have a preference, particularly given the length of the streets, that there is an emergency access connection. And I think to Fran's point, I think that if there's a way to still get 8 lots out of this that is with 1,000-foot length, or to Chief Slyman's comments that there's some compromise there, I think that's an improvement. But of these 3, they all have issues, in my opinion.
All right, thanks, Gary. Dave.
Option C.
Mary.
I just wanted to say that, that the new designs that you came up with, I think are a vast improvement. After our last meeting, I was thinking, well, I think you're going to have to resign yourself to a cul-de-sac off of Cedar Street and 4 lots, and that's it. But clearly there are other options. I think that if you could put an access road between the 2 on concept plan B, that would be the best option, in my opinion.
Deb?
I know it's really tough. I think you have come a really long way, and I appreciate all the effort that's gone into it. And I agree with the comments that have been made. But I am leaning towards Gary's conclusion that just a little bit more work needs to be done to really make it a cohesive option for them to be cohesive options. And it does sacrifice perhaps a house. Perhaps it can be worked where a smaller lot is in there. I'm not sure how Joe can make some magic, but I like the idea of having connectivity for the fire department and also for runners and walkers. And I'm looking forward to seeing the paths on the plan sort of congeal and connect to each other rather than being cut off at the house lots. I noticed that as well. But I have to say, I really love the Lincoln Street being solved, whether it's a 2-house lot or whether it's just a circle. So vast improvement. Great job.
Sundar.
I wanted to echo the previous comments. The improvements made to Lincoln Street are absolutely amazing. I do agree that the interconnection of communities, bringing the communities together in terms of providing that access road is important. So it does seem like a modified Plan B with that access road would be ideal if that was indeed possible.
Fran, are you prepared to provide some feedback?
Yeah, I am, Rob, so I appreciate that. And I also like to echo the group's comments back to um, um, Courtney and her team. To come to us before us with some options is pretty helpful, and hopefully the feedback that we're providing is helpful as well as you guys go back and assess. I'm kind of in Gary and Deb's camp on this a little bit. Now, one thing that if I recall right, that access road that we're talking about is pretty long, right? It's not like it's 1,000 feet or a couple hundred feet. I think it's half a mile, give or take. It sticks in my head. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's a pretty long access road. If that is
Not by looking at the map. How long would it be?
He's talking about on the original plans.
On
So
Plan C.
Plan C, it is long, but on Plan B, it wouldn't be.
Okay.
Okay, so if I'm going to lean a little bit, I do want to provide some direction back to Courtney and Joe. I'm probably leaning toward B, but I am pretty strong at that 1,000 feet for the dead end. So if there's something creative that can be done, and maybe look at the configuration with an extra lot out in what have you, but hopefully that's enough direction to take it back.
All right, thanks, Fran. Jane.
I'm going to agree with Dave Paul. I like the original one.
Jane, we can't have you and I agreeing. That just doesn't work. So Rob, when you get a moment, I would like to make one final comment when you're ready.
Yeah, let me just give my thoughts. It's funny. I think I prefer maybe a modified option C, but that's probably closest to what I would prefer. Is something that there's definite benefit to having a cul-de-sac on Lincoln Street. I don't see how any logical person could say it's the ability for a trash truck to turn around, the ability for a UPS driver, a FedEx driver, a car that's lost, that takes a wrong turn, to be able to turn around in a cul-de-sac is not better for anyone driving down Lincoln Street. So
Rob,
I believe that. And
all three plans have a cul-de-sac on Lincoln.
yep, yes.
Oh, okay.
So all three plans would extend the length of Lincoln Street. So all three plans would require a waiver to extend the length of Lincoln Street. So with that being said, I think any of the plans, like the option that has no new houses, could just be a plan that has just a cul-de-sac off of Cedar Street Extension, and they don't do any improvements to Lincoln Street. That they could have presented a plan like that, but because they want to make that kind of improvement, I think keeping the road off of Cedar Street Extension under 1,000 feet is desirable. And I think having the interconnectivity of walkers, joggers, bicyclists, kids maybe have friends, whatever, there's a benefit. So,
Rob,
that's
just
my
one
feedback.
final comment.
Go ahead, Dave. We have to move on, but
Yep,
go.
just to wrap it
We're
up.
way over time, guys.
Yep. So I just want to make a point, though, that we set a precedent as a board with Chamberlain and Whalen, and that is a much longer streets than this. So I really don't understand. I do understand why we're trying to stay within our bylaws of 1,000 feet, but we've already set the precedent, guys.
So, Mr. Chair, I also want to make a statement. I got an email from Elaine. She was listening in, Elaine Lazarus, and she made a comment that the board, she believes the board does not have the ability to waive the 1,000-foot cul-de-sac length. And I know that we've talked about this as a board. It's not very clear in the bylaws whether the board can waive it or not. It does say that it's an intensity regulation and the board can reduce intensity regulations. So I need to get more clarification on this. So they may need a variance from the ZBA if the road goes longer than 1,000 feet. If the board is not allowed to waive that cul-de-sac length. I don't know if that changes anyone's opinions on the plans, but it definitely does have an impact on some of the plans that were submitted.
Yeah, I think we need to get clarification and provide that back to the applicant. All right, we are way over time. We need to move to the next agenda item. So if there's no, I think that we've provided the best feedback we can provide, and look forward to. Can we should? I think we had tentatively, or maybe not tentatively, maybe more formally, we put this on the agenda for November 12th.
16th.
November 16th.
So Gary Trendle, I'll move to continue this hearing to November 16th.
So moved.
Seconded.
All right, through roll call vote, we're gonna proceed here. Gary Trendle,
Trendle, yes.
Dave Paul,
Dave Paul, yes.
Mary Larson Marlowe,
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Deb,
Deborah Feinberg, yes.
Sundar,
Sundar Sivaraman, yes.
Fran,
Fran Dion, yes.
Jane,
Jane Moran, yes.
Rob Benson is a yes, and Muriel recused herself from this, so I don't think we need a vote. So thank you very much, and I'm going to hand the chair back to Gary.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Rob. So let's see. I'm just going to, I know that technically we have the Buckland and Leonard Street to continue first, but I'm going to actually recommend we go straight to the petition to construct Leonard Street. And my feel pretty strongly that we should be able to get to a decision on this tonight. And if that's the case, Mr. Petrosi, then I'm hoping that maybe we don't need to continue Buckland and Leonard Street as well. Does that seem reasonable to you?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. And I will say that one of the things that I want to sort of accelerate tonight is actually getting to the waiver requests, because I think that as we get through those, that should provide some good clarity and direction on where we go. But Mr. Petrosi, before we get there, I wonder if you want to just give us a really quick update if anything has changed since we discussed this last.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since we last met, I did submit a revised list of waivers that had been requested and an explanation why the waiver was being requested. We also submitted for visual effect a colored site plan so that the board could visualize what we're proposing to build and that sort of thing. And we also engaged the fire chief with some mitigation measures to give him a greater comfort level with what we're proposing in terms of the mitigation for the length of the roadway and the turnaround. And those are items that will be discussed during with the waivers. So I think we've reached a general agreement that the mitigation that we're providing is satisfactory to the chief for this proposal. So that's what we've been doing since the last time we met, and I'm ready to discuss the waivers as you suggested.
Okay. So let's go ahead and do that. I apologize, John, just to make sure, And I don't have my computer to pull up this supplemental document that Mr. Petrosi provided to us in front of me here. I can go grab it if need be, but can we work off of the requested waivers list that's in the meeting packet of 3.9.1?
Would you like me to pull up his document?
Yeah, if you could, that'd be even better. And real quick, while John is doing that, is that everybody? Does that make sense to everybody from a process perspective? You can just nod your heads. I can
Yes,
see
it
you
does.
all. Okay. Okay. And thank you, Mr. Petrosi, for pulling this together as well. So let's start with the environmental analysis, the request to not conduct the environmental analysis. And sorry, go ahead, Mr. Petrosi.
Well, I was going to just explain each waiver as we went through them, so if there were any questions. But in this particular case, we've been in front of the Conservation Commission for the better part of 2.5 years. The commission recently granted us orders of conditions for the construction of Leonard Street that's before you tonight, as well as construction on 3 of the 3 lots that are proposed to be built upon. So I think we've kind of beaten the environmental aspect of this pretty good.
Yeah, so just one point of clarity I'd make though is that this is only for the petition for the road. This we're not reviewing the A&Rs at this time. So just want to remind the board that we're not shouldn't even be looking at those lot developments. We're only looking at the road itself. Any questions for Mr. Petrosi about that, the requested waiver for section 5.4 environmental analysis?
So to the chair. So
yes,
Gary,
go ahead. Go ahead, Frank.
sure. So Mr. Petrosi, so what you're saying is that this has already been, and I'm using my words, so correct me if I'm wrong, it's already been vetted in front of COMCOM and they've provided conditions associated with this. So that essentially you're saying negates any type of additional environmental analysis for this board, correct?
That's what I would say, yes.
Gary, or maybe Gary or John, is there precedent for that? Is that something, I'm sure we can take it, but are we leaving something on the table by not doing or having an environmental analysis completed here?
These waivers have been granted in the past. Whether it's up to the board to determine whether an environmental analysis would be needed because the environmental questions have not been answered. But otherwise, they have been granted in the past.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Petrosi on this one?
Yeah, I want to know what those environmental questions were and also what the conditions are. What are the conditions that they granted you the environmental permission?
Well, Mr. Chairman, there's an order of conditions that's been recorded, and it's quite lengthy. It's 10 or 12 pages long. Has many conditions in terms of from erosion control to construction management to sequencing, and so it's quite a lengthy set of conditions that are pretty standard with for the commission to issue. I can't go through I don't have it in front of me, so.
So if I can clarify, I think what Deb's asking is specifically to the environmental analysis, what makes you believe that we shouldn't need to do an environmental analysis because of the CONCOM conditions?
Well, it is an existing gravel roadway already. All we're doing is widening the roadway and paving it and providing a more beneficial stormwater management methodology than is currently existing there now. We're not increasing the impacts that already exist on that roadway. We're not doing it.
I'm just wondering, Mr. Paradise, if you could confirm that you are in agreement with those statements that Mr. Petrosi just made?
So, Mr. Chairman, so the project has gone through a bit of review with the Conservation Commission, as Lou stated. The site is not within a stormwater critical area. It is not within a endangered species habitat area. It is not promoting uses that would provide land use that would provide higher pollutant levels. So it's pretty, and it's a residential design, so it's not, you're not introducing chemicals or exorbitant noise, and so it's generally within kind of a limited impact. As Lou stated, it's gone through extensive review by the Conservation Commission, so they've provided a number of conditions relative to the impacts to the wetlands and those resource areas. So.
Okay, thank you, Phil. Any other questions before we take a vote on this waiver request? Okay, so John, I apologize, but from a process perspective, do we need a motion to vote on this waiver?
Yeah, somebody should move to grant. It should be all motions to grant the waivers.
Okay.
And then if it doesn't.
So I will entertain a motion to grant a waiver to section 5.4 specifically for the environmental analysis, the required environmental analysis.
So moved.
Mary Larson Marlowe, second.
All right, no further discussion. We'll move to the roll call vote. And again, we're voting to grant the waiver. Gary Trendle, yes. Rob Benson?
Rob Benson, no.
Muriel?
Muriel Kramer, yes.
Jane?
Jane Moran, yes.
Dave?
Dave Paul, yes.
Mary?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Deb? Deb, you might be muted. Deb, we can't hear you. Are you there? All right. Sundar?
Sundar Shivaraman, yes.
And I should just Fran is not eligible to. Is Fran eligible to vote on this?
I don't believe so.
I might not be eligible either.
Yeah, can we do a check really quick before we get? Stephanie, can you confirm who's eligible to vote on this?
Actually, I think everybody is eligible.
Okay.
Okay.
I think the other.
I'll confirm that, but I think everyone is eligible.
Oh, all right.
And Deb is just coming back. She must have gotten locked.
We did re-advertise and when we started this process over.
Okay.
For the chair,
Yes.
it looks like everyone is eligible to vote on this.
Okay. Thank you, Stephanie. Fran DeYoung?
Fran DeYoung, no.
And is Deb back? I don't see her yet.
I see her. Deb, can you hear us? She's connecting to audio.
There we go. Hi, Deb.
One finger for you.
Oh, she's muted.
Hand single.
Deb, can you give us a big thumbs up a little higher? Or a thumbs down? Okay.
Sorry, I'm on my phone now.
There we go. All right. So Deb, can you just, now that you're on the phone, can you state your vote?
What were we voting? I'm sorry.
Oh, We are voting to grant a waiver to section 5.4 for the environmental analysis.
Yes, Deborah Feinberg, yes.
Okay. So that would be 7-2, yes. All right. The next one, section 5.4, traffic impact report. I don't know if we necessarily need to have Mr. Petrosi talk to this. You can if you like.
So, I'm not sure a traffic report is required, but I put it in there.
Okay. John, can you give us some clarity if a traffic report would be required? Because I'd rather
reports
not waive the requirements if we don't have to.
Traffic reports are usually required for subdivision.
Okay. So I'll just share my perspective on this, and just to move things along, maybe I'll entertain a motion. But with adding 3 houses, or excuse me, with extending the roadway the length that he specified, with the potential for 3 houses, I personally don't feel that a traffic study is warranted here, given the potential impact. Does anybody feel strongly otherwise, or have any questions for Mr. Petrosi?
So, yeah. Go ahead. I can't see everybody right now, so it's going to be really hard for me to. All right, go ahead, Muriel.
I'm sorry. I was going to make the motion, Deb. I was talking over you. I apologize.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm just a little bit concerned about the school traffic coming out of the road and into the road because it's so narrow. So that was brought to attention in one of the letters that I was reading. I'm wondering what Mr. Petrosi thinks about that.
Are you referring to the intersection of Leonard Street and Grove Street?
I believe that's what she's referring to.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, we're adding 3 houses, approximately, I'd say 8 houses that presently are existing between Leonard Street and Box Mill Road. We're adding 3 additional houses. I don't see how much difference a few extra cars are going to make to that situation.
Muriel, do you want to make your motion?
Yes, I will move that we grant the waiver to accept no traffic impact report for section 5.4.
Hey, Paul, second.
All right, no further discussion. We'll vote. Gary Trendle, yes. Rob Benson?
Rob Benson, yes.
Muriel Kramer?
Muriel Kramer, yes.
Jane Moran?
Jane Moran, yes.
Dave Paul?
Dave Paul, yes.
Mary?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Deb?
Deborah Feinberg, no.
Sundar?
Sundar Sivaraman, yes.
And Fran?
Fran DeYoung, yes.
All right, that motion carries 8-1. Section 8.2.1G, property lines, pavement rounding at street intersections. John, can you just scroll down a little bit there?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure that this is necessary, but I included it just in case. The regulations aren't very clear whether it's a rounding at the driveways or it's just roadways intersections.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point, and I know that your waiver requested at lot 1A, but again, we're not approving the lots here. We're only approving the finishing of the roadway.
Yeah, well, in that case, we don't have any roundings at any intersections for streets.
John, does that make sense to you that this would not be a required waiver?
Yeah, it doesn't, I mean, there's no street intersections.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to recommend that we just remove that waiver request. Section 8.2.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I think Mr. Petrosi should probably acknowledge that he would like it removed.
Right.
Yeah, I would request that that waiver request be withdrawn.
Okay, thank you. The next one in the requested waivers that I have on my list here is 8.2.2A, granite curbing, which, Mr. Petrosi, look at the next one on your list. It's 8.2.2.C, the modified Cape berm.
Yeah, I deleted the current granite curb because we don't have any roundings or at street intersections. So the original request for waivers included that one, but I don't think it's applicable.
Okay. And I should pull up my bylaws here and just confirm, but John, can you confirm that that granite curbing requirement is only at the intersections themselves?
It's, if I may, Mr. Chairman, it says granite curbs shall be required along all edges of pavement with radii of less than 100 feet. So.
Got it.
This is a straight road, no radii.
Yep. That makes sense to me. So are you formally requesting it to be removed?
Well, I removed it in this revised, that was in the August 11th waiver request. This one on the October 9th revised waiver request, it's not included.
Okay.
So
John, does that make sense to you?
Yep, I think that works.
Okay. So then section 8.2.2C, modified Cape Cod berms.
Yeah.
So radii only also.
Well, that says shall be required along all edges of pavement where radii are greater than 100 feet and at other locations not covered by A and B. So this would be a location not covered by A and B, I guess. But essentially, the way we've designed this drainage is for it to, the roadway is tilted towards our property, where there'll be a drainage swale along the side of the road that will channel any surface runoff onto into a basin that will be on our property adjacent to the driveways. I don't know if you can show that, John, on the site plan that we put in. If that helps.
Yeah, that's helpful. Any other questions or comments before we vote on this? If not, I will entertain a motion to grant a waiver to section 8.2.2C, modified Cape Cod berms.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chair.
I'll second.
All right, no further discussion. We'll take a vote. Gary Trendle, yes. Rob Benson?
Rob Benson, yes.
Muriel?
Muriel Kramer, yes.
Jane?
Jane Moran, yes.
Dave?
Dave Paul, yes.
Mary?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Deb?
Deborah Feinberg, yes.
Sundar?
Sundar Sivaraman, yes.
And Fran?
Fran Dion, yes.
Okay, motion carries. Section 8.2.3A, width of street right of way.
So this waiver is requested because we only have a variable width right of way 27 feet to 30 feet. We have no ability to expand that right of way to 40 feet. So we're proposing that we be within the right of way that's allowed for us there.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Petrosi on this?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I have a question. Why is it that you are not able to utilize the full width and right of way?
Well, one side of the street is owned by other property owners, but primarily it's the existing wetlands that are on that kind of extend the length of the frontage of our property. And I'm sure that even though we really didn't approach it with the Conservation Commission, but they frowned on any kind of alteration or filling of any wetlands. So we're kind of restricted to whatever we have available to us.
I have one more question, Mr. Chair. What
Yes, please.
exactly do you have available to you for road width and right of way? I think this is for me, this is the central question here tonight.
So we have, as I mentioned, 27 feet to 30 feet. It varies from location to location. We're proposing to use 20 feet of that 27 feet for pavement, the paved surface. We're using a sizable portion of the remaining 7 feet for drainage swale on the northerly side of the property to accommodate drainage so that we can channel it onto our property. So we are using the full right of way, the full 30 feet, or the full 27 feet, whatever applies. It's just that we can't make it any wider than what it is.
Well, my last question through you, Mr. Chair. So you have confirmed that with Concom, that's the most that they will allow, or you have not asked that question?
We had many conversations with the right of way. Really didn't come into any kind of request to fill wetlands relative to the roadway. We did have lots of discussions relative to the driveways. So from that discussion, it's pretty apparent that they want us to minimize any kind of filling of wetlands. We didn't think it was a topic of conversation that would be favorable, that they would favorably react to.
Through the chair, Dave.
Yes, please.
I just want to re-ask the question. I believe Mr. Petrosi said that he will have the width of the road at least to what it is existing today before this existing Leonard.
Yeah. So I'm wondering really quickly, Lou, maybe if you just want to speak to 8.2.3A, the minimum width of the street.
Well, you know, this roadway dates back over 100 years. Leonard Street, the public portion of Leonard Street is a similar width. It essentially extends from Grove Street well over 1,600 feet down to the railway bike path that's down.
I understand, but you just told us that the paved section was going to be 20 feet, but then I also see that you're requesting a waiver from that requirement that it be at least 20 feet.
No, I'm not I think what we discussed previously in the next section for width is you have a minimum width requirement, and then you list several types of roadways: major, minor, rural, non-residential. So in my next section, I'm requesting that the board determine that it's a rural road requiring only 20 feet of pavement, which is a determination that the board had previously made when we were discussing Buckland Street as a rural road requiring only 20 feet of pavement.
Yes.
20 feet of pavement is the minimum width of pavement that is considered adequate for fire apparatus and emergency vehicles as a fire lane. So yep. I'm not looking for the pavement to be reduced beyond 20 feet. I mean, I'm just asking for the board to determine that 20 feet is acceptable under the rural definition of your 8.2.3C.
Yes. So I'm going to propose actually that we talk about that one first, because I think that, at least for me, the width of the street is probably more important than the width of the right of way. So, you know, I think that determination of it being rural, that's reasonable to me. What do other people think about that?
Agree.
Does anybody disagree that that should not be classified as a rural street? And really quickly too, I should say, if there are members of the public that have questions or comments on this, you can just use the raise your hand feature in Zoom, and we'll make sure to unmute your mic so that you can ask your question and make your comment.
Through the chair?
Yes, Mary.
Thank you. I have a question for John Galsich. I've been looking through regs and I'm trying to find the guidelines regarding number of residences on a dead end street.
So let's hold on that one, Mary, only because that's the next waiver.
Okay, but I really think that that has something to do with the width of the pavement as well. Whether or not you consider it minor or rural, that sort of thing. I mean, obviously rural streets are often, you know, throughways. And so they don't necessarily have a limit on the number, but I'm just, it'll be helpful if, and I just can't find that in the regs. I know it is somewhere.
I have a note, Mary, that it's less than 10 homes for rural.
Less than 10 homes, and how many homes are on Leonard Street right now?
So if I can clarify that, Dave and Mr. Chair, in the definitions, Mary, is where it says it. It says rural street, a street which carries or is anticipated to carry traffic equivalent to that generated by 10 or fewer dwelling units and is not capable of extension.
Okay, and how many dwelling units are on Leonard Street?
I think there are 5 right now.
5 existing and then 3 additional, so it would be 8 total?
Right. I'm pretty sure that's the case.
And that does not include the ones on Box Mill, correct?
No.
Right. And we did, you know, again, I don't think I heard a specific answer about what the width of Leonard Street is up to the point before it becomes gravel right now.
So
what is the width?
The paved width is approximately 17 feet, of which is the public way that the town is responsible for. It's 17 feet wide, roughly.
Okay.
Which is different than the right of way, which is the width of the path where the roadway can be constructed.
Okay, thank you. In that case, with those 2 considerations in mind, I think that classifying this as a rural street is appropriate. So 20 feet width of pavement.
This is Muriel. I would agree. Do we need to vote to do that?
John, do we need to, I'm assuming we need to vote on determining this to be a rural street, or is that, you know what, let's, oh, go ahead, John.
Yeah, I would say, let's see, how is it written? 2, 3.
It says the minimum width of actual traveled way in a subdivision shall be determined by the board with regard to the nature of the subdivision. And then it lists the types of streets and the traveled way pavement width.
I think it would be appropriate to have a determination from the board that the 20-foot rural road is appropriate.
Okay. And really quickly, we've got Mr. Barker Hook has his hand raised. So if we can unmute him and he can ask his question and make his comment.
Am I on, Gary?
You are. Welcome.
I'm just listening in.
Can you state your name and address, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. Ted Barker Hook, 75 Grove Street. I just want to chime in. I walk my dog on that road a lot, and I was just looking at Google Map. There are at present 8 homes right now on Leonard Street. 8 homes that have their driveways that go on to Leonard Street. That does not count the 3 proposed homes. So since that was a question as a definition for a rural street, I just wanted to give some information on that.
Okay, thank you, Ted. And just as a reminder, we're not actually reviewing the approvals for the lots that he.
No,
would be
I
building on.
understand, but I'm just following up on the discussion I heard about how many houses there are.
Yep. So I think for our consideration right now, if we assume there are 8 houses, then that's what we should be using to evaluate this determination.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, we have somebody who wanted to comment. Put it in the chat, but needs to put it verbally.
Okay, so this is I'm wondering, Ms. Connolly, are you on?
Yeah, I just was
Oh, great.
commenting on the rural road.
And can you state your name and address, please? Just for the
Sure,
record?
Linda Conley, 56 Pleasant Street. So I am an abutter to the project. I just am agreeing with the other gentleman who just spoke that I think with an additional 3 houses that would be going in, then it would no longer fit the criteria of a rural road in that case. I think there are more than 5 right now. I agreed with the other person who spoke just now.
Yeah, and he was saying that there are 8, and the maximum for a rural road would be 10. So it sounds like.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Petrosi.
So if you read the regulations, I mean, the difference between we want to get into the nitty gritty, the difference between a rural road width and a minor width is only 2 feet. So if you're going to say that we are going to be over the 10 limit, the next category is 22 feet. And it's not really a very significant increase in pavement width to what we've proposed. So,
well, I don't know if it's significant or not. You know, I mean, I guess to me, I think this is probably something for you to determine. I think what we're telling you is that, and we haven't taken a vote on this, but that as it currently stands, at least for me, I'm supportive of this being considered a rural street with a 20-foot width. If there were more than 10 houses on it, then that, I don't know enough to comment, but I given that our definition is a maximum of 10 houses, I don't really see how you could put 3 additional houses to make 11 total on a rural road that's only 20 feet wide.
For you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Dave, go ahead.
I just wanted, in addition to that, I kind of support you on that. In addition to that, what John read at the end, the last of the description of a rural street, it says that it's not capable of extension. So if we say this is a rural road, then it can't be extended.
Yeah, but I
would-
can answer for what Mr. Petrosi is about to say. The road already exists as a paper road, so he's not actually extending it, he's just building it.
Okay, either way, it doesn't qualify for the 10 or fewer, right? So I think we need to make it a minor 22 feet.
So, Mr. Chair, I just want to jump in here. I know that we've talked about this before, but this petition does not involve the A&R. So technically the road does not have 11 lots on it. 11 lots may be served on it in the future, but currently as it stands, there are not 11 lots.
Yep, I understand. And again, that's my point is that we're evaluating it right now based on the 8 lots. But I could foresee some problems if Mr. Petrosi wanted to come back and propose 3 A&Rs, because then the roadway would not be wide enough to support those 3 additional lots that he might be requesting.
So, Mr. Chairman, why don't we just make a determination of what kind of road this is? I mean, why, if it's not, if there's no, if the board isn't interested in supporting the rural designation, which is perfectly within the board's purview to grant this determination, then the determination, then we go to the next width, which is 22 feet, which is the minor street. So,
Yep, I understand, but right now we're evaluating it based on what's in front of us, which does not include 3 buildable lots. So I'm more than happy to take a vote on determining this to be a rural roadway. I'm just telling you that could be problematic for your future A&R proposals.
right. Well,
because
that's what I'm saying. So why are you going to ask me to build a road that's 20 feet?
I'm not asking you to build anything. You're proposing to build the road.
Well, I'm proposing to build something that's 20 feet. And then when I come in for my A&R, they're going to say, oh, well, you're going to make it 2 feet wider. So,
Well, that's what I'm warning you now, because you know, we can make a determination this is being rural, but that's not going to support 3 additional lots. So to me, there's 2 options, and we can vote on this, or you can go back and redesign this to be 22 feet wide as a minor, which still meets that rural requirement, and might potentially support those 3 A&Rs that you're proposing.
right. Well, why can't the board just condition its, if the board is interested in approving this, why not just condition it on the fact that it'd be 22 feet wide paved width, rather than have to go back, redesign, come back, waste the board's time. It seems to me that the board could simply make a decision that it's minor street requiring 22 feet of paved width, and we would revise the plans according to that certificate to your decision. It's a conditional.
Well, so I think that's reasonable, except for the fact that you know, you've already commented that in many cases you're using up that full 7 feet of additional right of way for drainage requirements. So if you extend the pavement 2 more feet, I don't even know if your current design is going to be sufficient.
Well, I guess that's the up to the engineers to work within your conditions. I mean,
okay. So let's do this. Let's do this. I will let's take a vote on whether or not we think this is rural. That 20-foot width is a minimum requirement. At that point, if at some point you want to come back and propose that this be 22 feet instead of 20 feet, which is not in the plan, which has not been reviewed by Beta, then that's, you can do so. But I think for now, let's make a determination as to whether or not it's rural, and if you want to come back and reassess a wider width road, then we can discuss that in the future. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay.
I will make a motion to determine that this is a rural roadway.
Mary Larson Marlowe, second.
Okay. There's no further discussion?
I just want to make sure that I state when I make the motion in the affirmative that I am not going to support that. And I would be much more inclined to support it being a minor roadway at a 22-foot width.
Okay, but
I
just to
just want
clarify though,
full disclosure. I just want to make sure everybody
Thank you,
understands where I stand.
yeah, and I just want to clarify though, it can be a rural road and still be 22 feet wide, correct? That's a question for John.
At that point, it's considered a minor road.
It is considered, okay, so it can't be wider than 20 feet and still be rural?
I mean, it's just the road width defines what type of road it is. So if it's a 22-foot wide road, it's defined as a minor road. If it's a 20-foot wide road, it's defined as a rural road.
Okay, thank you. What is a 17-foot road?
Those are not allowed.
Not the subject of discussion tonight, Mr. Chair.
Non-conforming, a non-conforming road.
Yeah. Okay.
So to the chair, just a clarification question. Are we then voting on whether or not this is a rural road of 20 feet?
Yes, that is what we would be voting on.
Okay.
All right, no further discussion. We will be. Yes,
Chair. So the road exists today. This new section, I'm not fully 100, maybe it's just me, but I'm not fully 100% clear on what we're voting. Can we just regular language. What are we trying to do here?
So since I made the motion, I'll take a shot if I can, Gary.
Yep, please.
The motion is to determine that the roadway will be classified as rural, which would set the guidelines for the width in the design to be 20 feet. Along with that determination, we understand that it is defined in the bylaw as having 10 or fewer houses on it.
Question?
Just to clarify, sorry, just to add to that too, is that is also in line with what is in the proposal.
But
Question through the chair.
Yeah, Dave, go ahead. Dave first, and then we'll get to Sundar.
So just to be clear for process, if we want to vote this to be a minor road, we should vote no and then make another motion.
That is correct. Sundar?
So Gary, this is a pre-existing road. I know we're calling this a paper road, but there are homes on Leonard Street right now, right? And
Correct.
It has a designation. Are we redesignating this, or what exactly? So I think I'm also a little bit confused about this, because homes are built on Leonard Street. What is the current designation, and why would we need to redesignate this?
So, per John's comments, the current road is not a conforming road because it does not meet that width. So by determining this as a rural roadway, that is just that's what determines what the appropriate width is for the roadway.
Okay, so just for clarity, homes that exist today are built on a non-conforming road. Is that what that means?
That's my understanding, yes.
So can I clarify, Mr.
Yes,
Chair?
please do, John.
All right. So this petition is really for the extension or the build out of Leonard Street to serve Mr. Petrosi's properties.
Yes.
The part of Leonard Street that's already built, not really subject of this. He's not going to make any improvements as far as I understand. It's not going to be changed. So there are 4 definitions of roads in the subdivision regs. You have major roads, minor roads, rural roads, and non-residential roads. Major roads are required to be 24 feet in width. And so those serve a certain purpose. And then going down the line, rural roads are classified as roads that serve 10 or fewer homes. And so therefore, because they serve such a lower level of traffic, they can handle a 20-foot width because you might not have cars passing each other and that type of thing. So all it's really doing is defining the type of road that Mr. Petrosi is building in front of his property. So I don't think the 17-foot road on Leonard Street really comes into play. It's non-conforming. It was built possibly before the subdivision regs were accepted. And it's really the paved width, the traveled way, what cars can drive on, rather than the right of way, which extends further than the road itself.
Okay.
Does that clarify everything?
Yeah. Okay. So John, before you mute your microphone again, so if we determine this via another different motion that this is a minor road with a 22-foot width, then how does that affect the design process? Because what's in front of us is not a 22-foot wide road, it's a 20-foot road.
Mr. Petrosi would need to redesign the plan and submit a revision showing the 22-foot road. So this one's tricky because it's not a waiver, right? It's really, you're treating a determination like a waiver, and that's fine. And if that's how the board wants to do it, that's fine. But he can be denied a waiver and revise the plan to not need that waiver anymore. And then the board can reconsider the plan. So if a motion has been made to determine this road to be a rural street and the motion fails, and then a motion is made to make this a minor street and that passes, then the roadway width would have to be 22 feet. Otherwise, the board would deny the application based on non-conformance to the regulations.
Okay. That's helpful. Thank you, John. So I guess my question for Mr. Petrosi is that, do you prefer this to be a rural road? Well, I guess there's two ways to look at this. Number one, we shouldn't be asking you what classification you prefer the road to be. But I guess I'm looking for some indicator. Is it again, as I look at this, if this is a rural road, that rural designation is not going to support any future proposals for, adding more than, having more than 10 houses on it. So I'm wondering if you have a preference for this road to be 22 feet wide, which would in turn support your future proposals of 3 additional lots.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think, I don't want to break this down into too many parts, but, you have Leonard Street, which is a public way, and our petition, which is to extend a private way 250 feet. I think one could argue that the 8 lots that are presently on Leonard Street are inapplicable to this petition. This is a petition to extend 250 feet of a private way to provide adequate access to our lots. Certainly, we haven't come this far. We proposed 3 lots. We got approval for 3 lots from the Conservation Commission. We would try to accommodate the board's wishes if they determined that we should have 22 feet and the town should only have 17 feet. I don't think that's really fair, regardless of what your definitions call for minor or rural streets. We're providing a better roadway, a wider roadway, a more accessible roadway than the town is providing to its current residents. I think it's a little bit problematic that would be an applicable standard to our 250 feet of improving a dirt road. But that being said, my preference would be if the board is going to classify this roadway as a minor roadway, that I would, like any other subdivision plan, expect the board to make that a condition of any approval, and we would come back with revised plans when to reflect that change.
Yeah.
Rather than have to re-advertise or do whatever, resubmit.
Yeah. So I just want to clarify one thing. And the decision criteria for this application is that the standard for approving the paper street design and construction details is the board must apply the current subdivision regulations to the greatest extent practicable. So, yeah. All right.
Through the chair, one question, Mr. Chairman, maybe this is for John for clarification. Are we to take into consideration the 8 existing houses on Leonard Street? Just following up on Mr. Petrosi's comment that if he's just looking to extend the additional 250 feet and there's only going to be 3 houses on that additional roadway, do we essentially not count the 8 because we're only talking about his 250 feet?
I mean, that's up to the board. It's a good point, because if you're looking at what cars are going to be traveling on the portion that's before the board right now, is it going to be 11 houses worth of car traffic, or is it going to be 8 houses worth, or is it going to be 4 houses worth? I mean, I would argue that it's going to be 4 houses worth because it'll be the Hildress and then the 3 proposed properties. Because it's only the portion that's being constructed now before the board. If you were looking at Leonard Street as a whole, that would be a different story.
Okay. All right. We're ready to take a vote on the motion to designate this as a rural street. All right. So we had a motion, we had a second. We'll move to a roll call vote. Gary Trenzel, yes. Rob Benson?
Yes. Rob Benson, yes.
Muriel,
Yeah, I have been moved by the arguments that have been put forward, and I am a yes.
Jane,
Jane Marin, yes.
Dave,
Dave Paul, yes.
Mary,
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Deb,
Deborah Feinberg, yes.
Sundar,
Sundar Sivaraman, yes.
and Fran.
Randy Young, yes.
Okay. I know that took a little while, but thanks for your patience, everyone. That was, I think, an important one. So let's go back to the right-of-way width being less than 40 feet. I think we've talked about this as well. So if there's not additional questions, I will entertain a motion to grant a waiver to section 8.2.3.a for the minimum 40 foot width right of way.
This is Muriel. I'll make that motion.
Second,
All right, and no further discussion. We'll do a roll call vote. Gary Trendle, yes. Rob?
Rob Benson, yes.
Muriel?
Muriel Kramer, yes.
Jane?
Jane Marin, yes.
Dave?
Dave Paul, yes.
Mary?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Deb?
Deborah Feinberg, yes.
Sundar?
Sundar Sivaraman, yes.
And Fran?
Randy Young, yes.
Okay, that motion carries. Section 8.2.5, A, B, and C, dead-end streets, turnaround, hammerhead turnaround.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if I may, we've had quite a few conversations, exchanges of emails with the fire chief regarding this situation. Obviously, we are unable to provide a turnaround of the width or diameter that is called for in the regulations due to existing conditions of wetlands. And we've proposed a hammerhead turnaround that's been analyzed for truck turning swept analysis, as they call it. And we believe that that's been an accepted practice for this kind of situation. And we asked the board to waive the turnaround requirements for this proposal.
Okay. Questions?
I have one.
Yes, please.
Mr. Josie, why?
Why we can't provide it?
Yes.
Well, as I mentioned, there's an extensive wetland to the north that's on our property, and we don't own the property on the other side of the right of way. And I mean, we're not proposing to extend the roadway beyond where we've proposed it to be constructed. It's the regulation calls for a waiver where exceptional circumstances exist that it cannot be provided. So we're in Leonard Street's an existing private way. It's an already dead end street. Quite honestly, what we're going to be providing is better and more adequate than what's available, what's existing there today. And we've asked for the waiver.
But today, I think the street just ends, correct?
Excuse me?
Today, the street just ends. That
No, the street continues as a gravel road for quite a ways to one sole house that's existing probably another 800 feet beyond where our pavement, where our turnaround is going to end. So right at the moment, there is no turnaround for fire apparatus on that road on Leonard Street private way. They'd have to back all the way out. What we're going to be providing is at least a place where fire apparatus, large trucks can turn around in the driveways that we've provided that meet the turning analysis that's required for a 100-foot ladder truck or whatever that dimension is. So right now it's just a gravel road, one way in and one way out, and there's no room to turn around at the end.
Yeah, so I think the argument, Mr. Petrosi, if I can help you out here, is that it is an improvement over what there is now.
Correct.
My question for members of the board is I'm wondering if there are other situations where we've approved hammerhead turnarounds like this instead of a full cul-de-sac. And I'm trying to recall if I've seen any, and I haven't been on the board as long as some of you have, but can any of you recall a situation where we have allowed hammerhead as an alternative?
Through the chair, Gary, I do know there's been a couple instances. I want to say one that I can think of. I can't remember if it was Penny Mill Lane or something to that effect, but I do recall us having approved and accepted a hammerhead situation.
Okay.
Muriel, I don't know if you can.
So Gary, through you, Mr. Chair, I don't think I've handled one since I've been on the board. At least I don't recall it if I have. I just have a question of maintenance and snow removal. If we're considering it a safety feature, how do we make sure? I mean, does the town plow down past that currently?
My understanding right now is that it's privately plowed by the homeowner that's existing at 19 Leonard Street, from what I understand. And we have had discussions recently where we're going to cooperate with one another to make sure that the roadway is maintained and plowed by the homeowners association that will be formed for this 3-lot development. But I don't think the town plows beyond the public portion.
I was assuming that, yeah. Okay.
Through the chair.
Yeah, go ahead, Deb.
Yeah, I have some real concerns about this. So we're using, for the fire equipment, we're using the driveways as a hammerhead, as the turnaround. That blocks the driveways. It blocks emergency equipment from potentially getting in there faster if there's a truck trying to turn around. I see it as a hindrance. I just can't approve it like this. I just, with a clear conscience, I can't do it. I see it as being a problem versus a positive.
Mm-hmm.
For those two houses particularly.
Yeah, so maybe Chief Slamman, I know we've talked about this before, but maybe you can just remind everyone of the fire department's position on this.
Yeah, I think the exercise is if we could access, I mean, we did the exercise pretty good on that other road, it's Buckland. We tried to see whether we could make it so that you could travel all the way around. And then if you can't, and I think that's what I'm getting out of Mr. Petrosi, then what's your next best option? That's my understanding of what the exercise is. And that exercise has brought us to the point where we would back into, use the driveway as a hammerhead. And what I've asked of Mr. Petrosi is if that is the best solution for what we're allowed to do. And again, that's kind of, I look to the board to kind of tell me whether that's right or not. I've asked him for some mitigation that we put in this fire protection system, and he said, okay. I don't want to get ahead of the board though, or what Phil might say, because I don't. I can never tell whether that's truly what is allowable or not.
Yeah. So just a couple of things, and I appreciate your comments on that. Number one, while I think that's great that he has offered to provide the fire suppression measures on these houses, that's not even on the table for discussion tonight because we're only talking about the road, not the 3 lots. So there's actually not a way, John and I have talked about this, there's not a way to condition this approval on that being done. And to me, it kind of goes back to, do we consider this exceptional circumstances? And to your point, Chief Slammer, that's for us to determine. But you know, in general, I guess it sounds like from what I hear from you is that there are circumstances where you are where you do feel that a hammerhead turn can provide a sufficient level of safety, particularly if combined with other measures. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, and I apologize. Sometimes it's a challenge for me to identify just which playing field I'm on. But you know, from I invited the board to. We're encouraged in the fire service to work with developers and potentially compromise, say, the width of a road for improved fire protection. And that's kind of a standard that's out there right now that's getting pushed across the state. But I can never tell exactly which playing field I'm on. So I'm just trying, that's why I attend all these meetings, just to try to sense whether this is appropriate or not for the conversation.
And I will say, so that if that's a potential option, that gives me a little bit of peace of mind. I guess what I'm still struggling with this is using a private driveway as that hammerhead turnaround. And I guess that's where I struggle with this. It just seems like something that's going to be confusing. That, you know, maybe for the fire trucks, they're going to turn around wherever they need to, for that matter. And if that's in a driveway, so be it. But for other types of vehicles, and I don't know, it just makes me really uncomfortable. Yeah, go ahead.
If I may, and again, I spent a lot of time with the Buckland exercise. It's just been a good exercise for us doing a risk assessment. You know, you've had a great dialogue. There's current conditions, and the current conditions are challenging already. If I have to go to the end of the street, and we try to just make a really in-depth risk assessment to see whether I can look at the board and say, at the end of the equation, add in some of these mitigations, it looks like, and if this is, I don't want to back into a private road as part of a design plan, but if that's, my understanding is in certain circumstances for these paper roads, you may not have an option, and the person still has the right to develop it. And again, now I feel like I start to drift off of not knowing where my playing field is here. So, but I try to make a calculation that can get presented to you to talk through.
Yeah. Thank you. And I think you summarized the challenge that we face very, very well. And that certainly this is far from ideal, but it's still an improvement from what's there now. So yeah, that's where it gets a little bit messy. Any other questions or comments on Dead End Road?
Yeah, so I have a question. I apologize. So we are only talking about the road, not any of the houses, but this particular item requires the turnaround, right? Requires the driveway.
That's a good question, Muriel.
Right.
So does that imply, Mr. Petrosi, that the hammerhead turnaround would be built with the road?
No, what it implies is that we would be conveying an easement to the town to use that portion of the driveways for turning purposes in perpetuity, so that that there will be an easement granted to the town to allow for this turning radius, and that's quite commonly done when you know, even for cul-de-sacs, you have turning, lots of cul-de-sacs or easements on private property as well. So it's not too different from that scenario. It's just a different form of turnaround.
Yeah, I think the tricky part though is that right now we're only reviewing the petition to construct the road.
Well,
and what you're proposing for an easement only is relevant if the A&Rs are approved at a later point in time.
What I would say is if the board wants to condition its approval on that being constructed along with the roadway, we have no objections to that since we already have an order of conditions to do that work.
You have an order of conditions from Concom. You don't have that from us.
Correct. That's what I'm saying. So if you wanted to condition your approval of this petition on that turnaround being constructed at the same time as the rest of the roadway, we would be able to accommodate that without any problem.
Okay.
So
John, does
it
that
would be
approach
constructed on the ground when we came in for our A&R.
Yeah. Mr. Gelsich, does that pass muster for you?
So the road would have to be built to the plans, and if the plans show the turnaround going into the driveway, they would have to, Mr. Petros would have to build the road out with the turnaround, whether there's a driveway there or not.
Correct.
Correct.
Right?
Okay.
Through the chair, this is Rob. What about typically with the building of homes, there's the wetland considerations, and how do we factor in the anything like that as it relates to the turnaround?
Mr. Chairman?
Yep, go ahead.
So it's all been approved, the driveways, the roadway, and the house construction have all been approved under 4 different orders of conditions, all parallel to one another. So we're free to construct the driveways and the turnaround and the roadway simultaneously so that when we are prepared to come in for our A&R endorsement, the board will find that these accommodations have been completed and they've been constructed to completion.
So does that make sense, Rob? The Concom has reviewed the road construction along with the lot approvals. So for wetland impact, that's already been factored into both the road as well as the lots.
But in our normal A&R process, like it's fundamentally the road is a construction on a lot that's going to be what would be a buildable lot. I'm just thinking about the kind of the approval aspect of it. We're approving the road with a turnaround in a lot when we're not approving the lot is not clear to me.
Yeah. So my position on that,
we do that
is that the what we're reviewing right now is the road, and if just the road were built, and that said road, we condition it to require that hammerhead, then even if those lots are never built upon, there's still going to be a hammerhead turnaround on this street, which gives fire trucks and other vehicles a means of turning around.
Okay.
And from a wetlands impact perspective, that has already been assessed by Concom. All right. So let's go ahead and take a vote. Or excuse me, before we take a vote, I will entertain, sorry, is there another comment or question? All right, I'll entertain a motion to grant a waiver to section 8.2.5 A, B, and C for dead end streets / turnaround hammerhead turnaround.
I'll make that motion.
Seconded.
Okay. No further discussion. We'll move to roll call vote. Gary Trendle, yes. Rob?
Rob Benson, yes.
Muriel?
Muriel Kramer, yes.
Jane,
Jane Moran, yes.
Dave,
Dave Paul, yes.
Mary,
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Deb,
Deborah Feinberg, no, I can't consciously separate the two at this time because I don't see the health and welfare of the people being served by having two driveways off of a hammerhead turnaround.
Sundar,
Sundar Sivaraman, yes.
and Fran.
Fran Dion, no.
Okay, so that carries 7-2. So, Mr. Petrosi, I hate to say it, but we are well over our time allotment. And I know you don't want to hear this, but we're going to need to continue this because we've got 2 other hearings on our agenda tonight. The good news is that we do have room in our agenda for the next meeting, which is November 16th. So are you amenable to continuing to November 16th?
Well, I guess so.
Okay. And John, do we need to extend the decision date as well?
We do, and we should probably also continue the Buckland hearing as well.
Okay. Can we do both of those should we vote on those separately? Or can we continue both of them on the same
You
vote?
could probably, I mean, you could do them collectively if you wanted to.
Okay. All right, so I will entertain a motion to continue the public hearings for Buckland and Leonard Street, as well as the petition to construct Leonard Street to November 16th, and to continue and to extend the decision date to, John? Is that
23rd.
I would say November 30th.
okay, to extend the decision date to November 30th.
I'll make that motion. It's Muriel.
Second,
Okay, no further discussion. We'll roll call vote. Gary Trendle, yes. Rob?
Rob Benson, yes.
Muriel?
Muriel Kramer, yes.
Jane?
Jane Moran, yes.
Dave?
Dave Paul, yes.
Mary?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Deb?
Deborah Feinberg, yes.
Sundar?
Sundar Sivaraman, yes.
And Fran?
Fran Dion, yes.
Okay. So, Mr. Petrosi, I apologize. I was hoping to get through this tonight, but as we've all seen, that when there are a lot of requested waivers, it just takes us time to get through them. So,
Can we be first again? Even though I wasn't first this time.
yeah, that's my fault. You can blame me for that. I didn't want to miss out on part of this discussion because I wanted to make sure that I was a part of it.
Right, I'm happy you were here for it, but can we still be first? It's very, there's only 4 more waivers to talk about.
Yeah, well, we know nothing's ever fast. We will make sure that you're not last. How about that?
Okay, thanks very much.
Okay. Thank
Good
you,
night.
Mr. Petrosi.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Night.
Okay. So moving forward to the scenic road application for Fruit Street. So, John, I don't know if you want to take these off your screen and then we can unmute. And we've got lots of people here. Just flipping forward to my pages here. Hang on 1 second. So before we get into continuing our discussion here, I just wanted to kind of remind everyone, and maybe it's worth having a quick conversation here about what is in scope for scenic road application. And I bring this up because I think that last time we talked about this, we got into a lot of discussion around whether or not widening Fruit Street was the right thing to do. And so I just kind of, and John very kindly, just in the meeting packet actually highlighted the decision criteria, and I'm just gonna read through this really quickly. But the planning board's decision on any application for proposed work affecting scenic roads shall be based on consideration of the following criteria. One, the degree to which the proposed work would adversely affect the scenic and aesthetic values upon which the scenic road designation was originally based. Two, the necessity for the proposed work in terms of public safety, welfare, or convenience. Three, compensatory action proposed, such as replacement of trees and walls. Four, availability of reasonable alternatives to the proposed work, which could reduce or eliminate anticipated damage to trees or stone walls. And then five, whether the proposed work would compromise or harm other environmental or historic values. And so I just want to align really quickly, because I think that at least in my conversations with John, generally speaking, scenic road hearings have to do with stone walls, moving stone walls, and cutting down trees. And and one can make the argument that if we weren't widening the street, then maybe we wouldn't need to do that. But I just want to sort of give everybody the option. If it gets really complex if we start to go down the pathway of debating whether or not we should widen Fruit Street. That's really not within our jurisdiction to debate here. If we think that that should be reviewed or revised because of the impact it causes to stone walls and to trees, then the reality is that we should vote and deny it, at which point the applicant would have to go back and reassess. So, John, did I describe that in an appropriate way, just per our previous discussion?
You did.
Okay. So, and really quickly, maybe, this is again based largely on John's guidance, who I immensely trust. His perspective is that we should stay focused on the stone wall impact and the tree impact, but I know that there's some potential feelings otherwise. So I just kind of want to talk about this as a board before we get into the details.
So I'll go ahead and go first, because I know I'm a point of contention here in this. I think that what you just read matches exactly the way that we have always worked. So if you're talking about the scenic road impact, you're talking about the adversely affecting the scenic or aesthetic values upon which the designation was originally made. And I think that we heard last time that there's a choice about whether or not to impact the roadway for the full length of Huckleberry to Saddle Hill, which, by the way, is behind me. I went out and took a picture. Those are all the trees that are going to go. I'm positioned taking that picture on the far side of the bridge, and Saddle Hill is right at the top of that crest. So I think that, I struggle a little bit too, because I support this project and I know that it needs to go forward, and I wouldn't impose conditions that would be an impediment to the project. But we are charged with protecting the aesthetic and scenic values. And part of that is the way that that the road is affected by big gaps in the trees in particular. So, for example, I remember I wasn't on any board at the time, but somebody was talking about a historic house downtown, and likened losing one of those houses as losing, a tooth in the smile. So a gap that we don't need to have imposes on the aesthetic and scenic values that, and I don't know how long Fruit Street has been a scenic road. I didn't look that up. I assume it's been almost as long as probably one of our first scenic roads. And it is an entranceway into the town. So I'm not, going to make a huge pitch, but it is really important to me to minimize the impact of scenic roads, no matter where they are in town, because I think that they have been designated for a particular reason. And certainly Fruit Street, the entranceway into town from from Southborough is probably the most scenic spot, most scenic roadway in town. So I think that it's a hard question, right? I would never suggest we impose on the state's ability to create the improvement. But if there is a choice about the ways that they do it that protects the scenic value of a roadway in Hopkinton, I do think that's in our purview.
Yeah. Well said, Mariel. I think I agree with all your points. And I think that at the end of the day, the first point of the decision criteria is to which the proposed work would adversely affect the scenic and aesthetic values upon which the scenic road designation was originally based. So my ask though is that we do use that as part of our decision criteria, but that we don't get into a debate about what the road width should be, that we evaluate what's been proposed in front of us, and we evaluate what the applicant is proposing as alterations and as the compensatory action for removing said trees. And that might seem subtle, but I don't want to get into a redesign or a sort of a debating the virtues and construction methodology and whatever else, because at the end of the day, what you just described, we should be evaluating this based on the scenic and aesthetic qualities of the road, and that's our job to do that. But I just want to leave out the discussion and debate about, what the road width should be. Sound reasonable?
So I'm not going to argue that point with you. I don't exactly know how you do that. If an applicant has a choice to avoid disrupting the scenic road to a certain extent, I think that is in our purview. But I also understand that this is an unusual situation. This applicant has been before other boards. I have no idea if anybody has taken responsibility for advocating for preservation of the scenic roadway. That is our purview.
Okay. Any other thoughts from board members before we move into the guts of the hearing?
Yeah, Gary, just one point of clarification. So discussion on the road width is really not within our purview. It's really, to Muriel's point, it's around the aesthetic view, the trees, the stone wall, etc. Correct?
Yes, that's my interpretation.
Thank you.
Okay. Let me just flip forward here. So just from an outline perspective, we have been through the introduction from the applicant. We've been through the staff report and the consultant review. And I apologize. One more thing that I just encourage people to look at here is the, I went a little bit out of order here, but the conformance with decision criteria. So I read off the decision criteria, and our John has actually kindly put in some comments with regards to his perspective. But I think let's go ahead and start working through the agenda, since we've already talked some about those decision criteria. So we have an outline that we typically use for these, section 5.8 in the meeting packet. And as I said, we've been through the introduction, the staff report, and consultant review. And what we'll typically do now is we'll get into some detailed discussion with public comment for each topic. And before we do that, I'm going to stick with the outline here, but I just want to ask, the topics that we have here I want to ask if there are any other topics that we want to add to the discussion. So we don't want to get into a lot of debate here. It's just a function of, are there things that we have missed that we want to make sure that we include? And so what's included now in the detailed discussion is number one, vehicular and pedestrian traffic flow, truck traffic flow, emergency vehicle access. Number two, noise. I'm not sure this applies. I think we can probably skip it, but HVAC and exhaust systems. Number 3, crosswalk locations or sidewalks. Number 4 would be building design and landscaping, if any. Number 5 would be town department and board committee comments not covered above. So I'll open it up to the board first to see if there are other topics that we would want to add to the outline. Fran.
So I have one, Gary, it might already be covered here, but I just want to be cognizant of it, is vehicular and pedestrian traffic flow. What about bike flow? I know that road gets a lot of bike use on it. Just something to consider.
Yep.
As part of that.
Yep, thank you. As someone that bikes that road all the time, I appreciate that. Okay. And I do want to open this up to the public. And again, we're only looking for topics or things that aren't covered elsewhere, but are there other topics that we would want to add to the detailed discussion? I see Mr. Fenn has his hand raised.
Yes, good evening.
Hi, can you give us your name and address?
Yes, it's Brad Fenn at 213 Saddle Hill Road, right at the corner of Fruit Street. And I do enjoy Muriel's background this evening with a photo of Fruit Street. So just recently, the Department of Transportation went for a waiver on wetlands impact. And I wonder if there's any part of your decision making that includes wetlands impact in this area. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Fenn. And John, I don't think that the scenic road changes have any impact on the wetlands, but I'll just look to you to confirm.
I'm not aware of any, and if they did, that would really be jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission.
Okay. But Mr. Finn, I think it's a fair question, and I'm of the mindset that well, to John's point, if it did, that fall under Conservation Commission.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and see if we can tackle these detailed discussion items. And again, that first one is vehicle, pedestrian, bicycle, truck traffic flow, and emergency vehicle access. So if we want to, it's always, I feel like, I'll tell you, like this feels a little awkward to me from an outline perspective. Because I don't quite follow what there is to discuss with regards to, sorry, I'm having a brain lapse here. But maybe if we could unmute the applicants here, and if they could just provide some brief comments on how this scenic road modification would impact vehicle, pedestrian, bicycle, and truck and emergency vehicle access and flow.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Thank you again for having us back. My name is Ryan McNeil. I'm the Mass DOT project manager for the I-94-95 project. I'm going to turn that question over to our design engineer, Jonathan Kapist. I'm sure he is scrambling through his files right now. We have reams and reams of traffic data and analysis for the entire project area. And I'm sure he can speak anecdotally to the bike, ped, vehicular traffic on Fruit Street.
Okay.
Jonathan, you there?
And can I just add one point of clarity too, is that I think what we're interested in is how these modifications to the scenic roadway might impact those areas. Okay. So I don't necessarily think we need the full traffic study and numbers and whatnot, but just speaking to how the scenic road modifications might impact those characteristics would be helpful.
Great.
Sure. Can I share my screen?
Yep.
Okay. Not yet. So I'll start with a section of the roadway. This is approaching Saddle Hill Road. So Fruit Street right now carries about 5,000 vehicles. We forecast, and this will be all the traffic analysis I give you. We forecast that by 2040, it'll have approximately 5,500 vehicles. So generally around the same, but a little bit more. Fruit Street's traffic is largely directional. So in the AM, it travels east. In the PM, it travels west. That does lead to a lot of caravanning on the road. So you'll see long runs of vehicles all traveling in one direction and then quiet for a little bit, and then the same thing happen again. Our proposed cross section takes the road from what is approximately 26 feet and widens it to 32 feet, and that would include two 11-foot travel lanes and a 5-foot shoulder on either side. And those 5-foot shoulders are not marked for bicycle travel, but could be used for bicycle travel. And then on the southern side, so traveling eastbound, there is a 5.5-foot wide sidewalk. As far as truck traffic goes, anecdotally speaking, the times that I've been on Fruit Street, I've seen plenty of landscape vehicles and whatnot traveling up and down. So theoretically, there'd be more of an ability for them to pull to the side of the road with a larger cross section.
Jonathan, is it accurate to say as a generalization that the ability to give different modes of transportation their own spot increases the safety for bikes, pedestrians, and vehicles?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's a nice summary, Mr. McNeil, so thank you. I'll open it up to the board. Are there questions or comments with regards to this topic?
To the chair.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead,
So,
Fran.
Jonathan, does that bike, let's call it bike path, but that area off the roadway to the sidewalk, does that extend to Saddle Hill and then all the way back to Huckleberry?
Yeah, just about to Huckleberry on the other side. I'll pull up the plan view. Hold on.
I know you showed it before, but I apologize.
So here it is in plan view. This is on the Huckleberry side. You can see the shoulders start to taper down just before you get to Huckleberry. The sidewalk does extend the entire length.
Okay.
So for people who are uncomfortable riding on the road, there is a sidewalk that would be usable, and given the amount of pedestrian traffic that would be out there, the use of it would probably be okay for that kind of situation. And you can see it does extend all the way to Saddle Hill.
So, question for you. You mentioned the traffic flow. Do you have any idea or any numbers on pedestrian or bicycle use there? I'm just trying to get a sense for the amount of people that would be favorably impacted by the modifications.
We don't.
Okay.
Anything I'd have would be entirely anecdotal.
Okay.
If I could, Mr. Chair, and I don't want to appear oppositional. I just do want to make the point. I am very often a big proponent of safety improvements. I think it's worth pointing out that on that particular street, as it is with many scenic roads, an improvement for a small portion of it doesn't necessarily improve the safety for pedestrians or bike travelers for the length of it. Assuming that people are only going from Huckleberry to Saddle Hill, that is helpful until they get to Saddle Hill, and then they're on an even tougher road as far as a safety perspective.
Yeah, I think that's a fair.
I used to walk that stretch when I was training for the Susan G. Komen. So I was looking for different walks. I love Saddle Hill, but I would not walk it after I did it one time because it just didn't feel safe to walk.
Yeah.
And wasn't walking at commuting times.
Okay. Before I go to the public, any other comments or questions from the board?
Yeah, through the chair, this is Dave.
Go ahead, Dave.
Quick question. I can't remember if those sidewalks are concrete or asphalt.
So they are concrete proposed right now. We do have a slide you had asked in our previous meeting about what aesthetic treatments we could propose.
Yeah.
To bring it more in context with the scenic road. So some options would be, instead of the steel looking guardrail, to have a weathered guardrail, a brown guardrail in its place. And then we could change the sidewalk from concrete to HMA.
So I think
both of which do give a more pleasing look on that kind of road.
I agree with those. Thank you, Jonathan. Just wanted to check with the chair and the rest of the board what they think.
I would agree with that.
Just a quick follow-up, Jonathan. So the wood guardrails are out, or you said you were going to check about whether they were met the safety standards of actual wood?
So the weathered guardrail matches with the rest of the project, and given the design build nature of this project, we would have to prescribe that particular item to the design builder.
Okay, because there are wooden guardrails on the rest of the street.
We've got some pretty strict requirements for guardrail and their crash testing and their certifications. I'm not aware of a project that we've done from the state level with wooden guardrails. The barrier that you see in the photo there is matches the requirements of our typical barrier, but that weathered look, like Jonathan said, is intended to kind of more fit in with the scenic feel of the roadway. We could do a little bit more digging on to wooden guardrails, but I'm certainly not comfortable saying now that that's something we can build into the project.
I'll just ask the question every time.
Yeah, and
thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, and I'll just add one more thing on the wooden guardrail. In order to connect to the bridge, it would have to be steel guardrail at some point, even if we were able to put in wood guardrail. So you're going to end up with a steel guardrail at some point on the bridge of at least
and the same thing,
30 some feet
sorry,
on every corner of the bridge.
Through the chair, don't want to go back and forth, but the same is true with the sidewalk, right? At the bridge, it would have to become concrete. Jonathan?
Jonathan, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, I don't know what happened there. Lost my my headphones for a second.
Do you want me to repeat the question?
Please,
Jonathan,
please
we
do
lost
repeat
you
it.
again.
Sorry. You there?
Yeah, we're here. We can hear
Can
you.
you hear us?
Okay. All right. Sorry about that. My headphone was.
Do you want me to repeat the
giving me a little
question,
problem.
Jonathan?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
So you were mentioning that the guardrail would have to change to steel even if we could go with wood. And I was asking if that's the same thing with the sidewalk, that even though it's asphalt, that would have to change to concrete at the bridge, correct?
On the bridge, it would be concrete. It could be asphalt immediately off the bridge.
Okay, thank you.
For the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Just my opinion. I understand the aesthetic desire for the asphalt sidewalk, but I feel like that they're much less durable And, I see the maintenance needs so much higher and when we have asphalt sidewalks put in around town. That's it.
Okay, so I'm just going to ask, we're kind of covering a lot of things on the agenda right now. But if we can stay focused on the first topic of traffic flow. And I know we have one comment from the public, but really quickly, I just want to provide my perspective, and I appreciate Muriel's comments that only improving a short portion of the road doesn't address, it's only useful if people are only in that portion. I don't personally don't agree with that. While I think there's some truth to it, the reality is that there's rarely a situation where we can take a long stretch of road and add safety improvements for whether it be for bicycles or pedestrians all at the same time. And so from my perspective, at least, any time that we're updating a road, if we can add some safety improvements for modes of transportation beyond cars, I think that's a great step forward, because in time, as we update more sections of the road, then that becomes a very viable safety improvement. So that's just my perspective. Let's go ahead. Mr. Stacy has his hand raised, so if we can unmute him, and Mr. Stacy, if you can just state your name and your address, and then
yes, Kevin.
Question.
Yes, thank you so much, Kevin Stacy, 207 Fruit Street, right at the intersection of Saddle Hill, right on the top of Mariel's picture there, the house with the white fence. And just about the traffic flow and safety, it definitely is a scenic road, but it's a very dangerous road. And to be able to connect to Huckleberry Road, which is an awesome road for walking and biking, has awesome sidewalks. But if my kids could just get to Huckleberry on a sidewalk, that would increase the safety so much. So I'd love to have the sidewalk. And crossing the bridge now is dangerous. There's a slight little curb, but it's not really wide enough to walk on or ride a bike on. And just as an aside, there is metal guardrails now currently on the bridge also.
All right, thank you, Mr. Stacy. All right, any other questions or comments with regards to traffic flow? Okay, I think that if everyone's okay, I think we can skip exhaust systems, screening of HVAC, and although I will say that it's probably worth a quick conversation of noise, because I think there is.
Mr. Chair. Chief Slammin here. I'm trying to wave my hands. I just don't think I'm catching your attention.
Yep. No worries. Go ahead, Chief.
I'm not sure what got said in the last meeting, but our public safety group did get together and review this proposal. We had a lot of the debate that you're having, and we were in agreement that to make these improvements for public safety was important as this proposal is presented.
Okay. Thank you, Chief. Okay, so the next section, I think the only thing that applies here is noise, and I do think that's worth talking about, because and we all know that natural vegetation can provide some buffer to noise, and I also know that that's a fairly noisy part of town, just given the highway around it. So I have a question for the applicant. As you clear some of the vegetation and you plant new vegetation, I'm wondering if you can comment on how the noise levels might change.
I can, and fortunately or unfortunately, I used to be the noise program manager for Mass DOT. So it's been a while, but at one point I was very well versed in noise along roadways and highways. So to your first point about vegetation reducing noise, the Federal Highway Administration has done research, and they state that it requires a minimum of 100 feet dense swath of vegetation that goes from the ground surface up to above the noise receptors to reduce noise levels by 3 decibels. 3 decibels is the minimum change in noise that's perceptible to the human ear. So in fact, removing these trees and replacing these trees isn't going to change the noise environment out there. That being said, they have also done studies. We all know perception is sometimes reality. They have also done studies in two people's adjacent backyards, one that has a very narrow level of vegetation that protects the visual of the cars, and one that has nothing. And they'll take an actual noise measurement, and the noise measurement will be identical. But then when you talk to the folks who live there, the people that can't see the highway perceive the noise to be lower than the people that can see the highway. So noise in this case, first of all, the improvements we're making here aren't going to change the noise environment. Second, whatever vegetation we remove or replace isn't going to change the noise environment. But the vegetation that we put back in there can certainly acts as a visual barrier to residents along that road. So I think, and we have our landscape architect on the line, that at some point during this conversation, she'll be happy to walk through the renderings with you and talk about kind of the approach and the logical approach that she took when deciding the plant spacing and the types of plants and the size of trees, partially and mainly to kind of keep that scenic road feel, but also partially to provide that visual screening to the residents.
Yeah. Okay. So what I'm hearing is from your work, no impact to noise due to these changes.
Correct.
Okay. Questions or comments from the board or from the public on noise? Okay.
Hi, this is Ellen Wilson from 9 Roosevelt Lane. I think there's very mature trees along the roadway right now. So when those get cut down, it's going to be replaced by much smaller vegetation. So initially there will be an impact, both visually and probably perceived noise. So I know we talked a little bit about, the calibers of the trees last time. I'm just wondering if that could just be revisited a little bit to see if, I understand the smaller, the easier it is to have them thrive initially so that they can grow. But I'm wondering if they can put in a mix of, some larger trees along with some of the smaller ones, if that's something that could be considered.
Yeah.
And working.
I think that's a great question, and we will get to that in section 5.4, building design and landscaping. Sound fair?
Okay, sure.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments on noise? Okay. Next one is crosswalks and sidewalks. And again, I think already had some discussion on asphalt versus concrete. And I think that to me, that's in the category of things that are not within our realm of discussion tonight. I think what we're primarily focused on is impact of sidewalks or crosswalk locations on the scenic and aesthetic qualities. So I don't know, that's my interpretation of it, but and I think we've already talked some about this, that those sidewalks, the trade-off associated with slightly wider road is that it per the fire chief and at least per one of the abutters, there could be some safety improvement there. Any questions specific about sidewalk impact? Okay.
Sorry, this is Ellen again. Just one quick question. How high are the sidewalks? Because I think the bridge sidewalk right now is unusually high. If you're trying to misstep, you fall off of it. It's just going to be a standard sidewalk height.
Yeah, so the sidewalk, what you're calling the sidewalks that are on the bridge right now are actually only wide enough to be considered safety walks. So they're really there largely for someone to step off the road if there's an issue. They're not intended to be walkable from one side of the bridge to the other as an accessible sidewalk right now. The sidewalk curb will be 6 inches per MassDOT standard.
Okay. So that would be lower than what's there, what's in those
That's on
walks that are there.
so
now.
it would be 8 inches on the bridge and 6 inches on the approaches.
Okay.
And that's both per MassDOT standard. So any bridge that you've ever been on that's been built by MassDOT looks exactly the same like that.
Okay. And I see Mr. Westerling has his hand raised. Go ahead, Mr. Westerling.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair, just wanted to weigh in on a couple of things before too many things pile up on my list here. With regard to the improved safety, the DPW was before the planning board a while back, looking to cut down a few of the trees so that we could increase the sight distance to the south, pulling out of Saddle Hill Lane. And I think that what we're seeing here will dramatically improve that even beyond what the DPW was able to do. And then with regard to sidewalks, I know that this isn't part of the purview, but it was mentioned. All the sidewalks that the DPW has installed over the past several years have been asphalt sidewalks, and they may not endure as long as concrete sidewalks. However, they are much easier to repair when repairs are necessary. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Good input. Appreciate it.
Hello, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Kathy Herbal. For some reason, my hand raiser isn't working,
Okay.
but I just had a couple comments on the
All right,
sidewalk.
Kathy, what's your address?
I'm at 24 Roosevelt Lane.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just a couple comments on the sidewalk, I guess, in regards to safety. If it is being provided from Saddle Hill down to Huckleberry, it would be terrific if they would consider taking it one more neighborhood to Roosevelt Farms. I've looked at the trees on that same side, continuing past Huckleberry, between the two entrances of Huckleberry, I guess is where I'm talking, so that we would have a safe crosswalk. Numerous people walk from Roosevelt to Huckleberry, vice versa. And it would be great if we had a continued loop through there, because at 5 o'clock, trying to cross that road and walk along that road, you're taking your life into your hands. So I think the safety steps proposed are good. But it'd be nice if they could just extend one more time. And like I said, I think the trees, I know the majority of that area, are fairly small, at least right along the roadway between those two entrances. There might be a few a little bit bigger ones, but a lot of it's just smaller underbrush.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that reminds me of the sidewalk survey that we instituted, I think about a year ago, that I think just with pandemic crisis, we haven't revisited, but I don't know if that's an option necessarily to consider this project for it, but I think you make a very good argument for why it would make sense to have a sidewalk and a crosswalk in that area. Okay. The next one I think is probably a big one, and I hate to do this, but just from a time check, we are at 10:09 right now. We still have one more hearing to get to. I'm going to look to the board members and just ask if we want to go ahead and keep pushing through this and extend our overrun on time tonight, or if we want to go ahead and ask the applicant if we can continue and continue where we left off at our next meeting. I can't see all of you.
A wise thing to, because this next subject is going to be pretty lengthy. I think we should ask the participant to consider coming back and revisiting it.
Yeah. Okay. And I know that the applicant had ambitions of hopefully getting through this tonight, but I just, given the time we've already taken, as well as I think to Jane's point, that landscaping, I think there is going to be a lot of discussion there. I think that we need to come back to that. But really quickly, so let's go ahead and do that. But I do want to, given that we have some other town department folks on the line, I just want to open it up since to them, and maybe on that section 5.5, if we can cover off on that one. Are there any additional comments from either from Mr. Westerling or from Chief Slamman that they haven't covered off on previously that they'd want to include?
Mr. Chairman, what is section 5.5 again, please?
Town department and board committee comments not covered above.
Oh.
I'm just trying to check boxes.
Yeah, through the chair, I would say that to this point, as the tree warden, I haven't received any objections to the removal of the trees along that section of roadway.
Okay.
And I think I would just, my comments on the public safety review of this is we did get our whole group together. John, what was it, about 6 or 8 people, police chief and others that evaluated this. So it's not just my opinion. I just wanted you to get that feel.
Yeah, through the chair, as Chief Slamman said, I was part of that group, and what we came up with was a recommendation to support this. And I think that that's what you'll find in the letter that town manager wrote to Patricia Leavenworth, the chief engineer of the Highway Division, back on March 9th of 2020. That echoes the sentiments of the safety folks and the department heads that were part of the review of this.
Okay. All right, thank you both. And I know it's a late night for you as well, so I appreciate your comments. So for Mr. McNeil, the applicant, I'm going to propose that what we do is we continue this and that we start right out on 5.4 just to review what we call here is building design, but I think the applicable part there is the stone wall design as well as the guardrails and the full landscaping plan. And then again, my hope is that we can get this wrapped up at the next meeting. Is that
Through you, Mr. Chair?
Sure. Yes, Dave, go ahead.
I did want to spend just a couple more minutes on sidewalks, if that's okay. Close that out.
Oh, I thought we already did close it out.
Well, you kind of moved kind of fast on that. I just wanted to make a comment.
Okay, go ahead, Dave.
So the woman from Roosevelt Farms, I think, makes a good point about safety, trying to get across the street. I think as part of this project, we should have a crosswalk going across the street. And I would like to suggest, I don't know how the rest of the board feels, that we formally ask the applicant to extend the sidewalk to Roosevelt Farm and draw a crosswalk across there. It's not very long and it would not be very expensive. So that's what I'd like to propose.
Yeah, Dave, I think it's a great idea for design. What I'm struggling with is that this is a scenic road permit. So it just, to me, I know as you're a big process guy, it just doesn't fall within the realm of this hearing for a scenic road.
So question for you, shouldn't safety be part of scenic road? It always was before.
Yeah, well, the scenic road has to do with where we're removing. I mean, I guess you'd ask the question as to should this design or request extend beyond Huckleberry, which would require removal of additional trees and some potentially some re-landscaping to accommodate that sidewalk. I don't know, it's getting late. I'm probably not firing it 100% right now.
Can we just agree to talk about it at the next meeting?
Sure. And I guess what we can do is I think the applicant has probably heard you. And I think the board, that is something we would like. I don't know if it can be incorporated in at this point, but we can discuss it at the next hearing.
Thank you.
Can I just make a point, Mr. Chair? It would require an extension of the permit application, right? Because
Okay,
it
that's
it
true.
is the scenic road. I do think that it is legitimately outside the scope of this conversation, although I agree that it makes sense. It would have been nice to include it in the conversation, but
Yeah.
I don't know that we can.
Muriel, that's a really good point. Thank you. All right,
Mr.
so
Chair, if I could just add something in regards to the continuation to next week or next meeting. We do have Deer Ridge, Chester Street, Leonard Street, and Buckland Street, and then this would be added onto that. And then theoretically, Zero Hayden Road would also be added onto that. So it is getting to be a full meeting next meeting as well. If that changes anyone's opinions about continuing.
when do we not have a full meeting? Yeah, I just, I think realistically, we're looking at probably another 45 minutes to get through this.
I do think the landscaping piece, the mitigation piece is a big conversation, unfortunately. Otherwise, I think that
I agree.
Is it possible to schedule 2 meetings from now?
Well, that would be December 7th. We do have a meeting November 30th, but that is, we're not going to hear any hearings. That one was already added in, so.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
may I make a proposal or a suggestion or a thought?
sure.
So we do have a few slides prepared for landscaping and for the stone walls. That obviously the two primary things we were here to talk about. Does it make sense to allow us to walk through those and get an initial feel from the board on those and maybe some initial questions that we can come prepared next time to answer?
I hear what you're saying. I think realistically, we're already so late, and we already have another hearing that we are obligated to hear. And my concern is that I'd rather have all of the landscaping and design discussion in one meeting, because I think that realistically, we're going to end up repeating a lot of the information you shared tonight. We're going to end up repeating that at the next meeting, so we just run into some inefficiencies there. So my preference would be just to hold it until the next meeting, because realistically, it's going to take some time to get through it.
Just a thought.
Yep. No, I appreciate it. Trust me. I as everyone knows, it's a constant struggle for us to get through all this. But we've got a lot of things to flush out, a lot of concerned people, and it just takes time. So, Ms. John, I realize that our November 16th agenda is filling up. I think we do put this one on. This is already our second hearing for Scenic Road. Zero Hayden Road might have to wait until that December 7th meeting, but I think for now we should, if the applicant is amenable to it, I'm going to recommend that we continue this hearing to November 16th.
There's still conversations to be had. So if that's what has to happen, then we'll do so. I would respectfully request that we be put earlier in the agenda. This is the second time that we've started bumping up against 10 or 10:30 or 11 or 11:30, and I think part of the reason why we've been continued is because of the late time, and I understand that. So respectfully request we be put earlier in the agenda.
Yeah, trust me, we all have full-time jobs as well.
No,
these are tough nights
and families, and yeah, I get it.
Yep, understand. Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to continue this hearing to November 16th. And John, I don't think we need to continue the decision at this point, but I'll look to you. Okay. So I'll entertain a motion to continue this hearing to November 16th.
It's Muriel. I'll make that motion.
Second.
All right, no further discussion. We'll take a vote. Gary Trindle, yes. Rob
Benson, yes.
Muriel?
Yeah, Muriel Kramer, yes.
Jane?
Jane Moran, yes.
Dave
Paul, yes.
Mary?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Deb,
Deborah Feinberg, yes.
Sundar,
Sundar Sivaraman, yes.
and Fran.
Randy Young, yes.
All right. Thank you, guys. And I apologize. Like I said, it just, we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you for your time.
Okay. So for this last hearing, Mr. DeYoung is going to take the chair. So at this point, I'll hand it over to him. And, I think, Mr. DeYoung, the mic is yours.
All right, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Welcome, everybody, especially those members of the public that have waited a long time this evening. We have a new application here for 0 Hayden Row. It is a open space and landscape preservation development special permit. What we will do, and given the late hour, there is in the packet 6.7, a public hearing outline, which I intend to follow, which really kind of walks through the various aspects and elements of this proposal. Given the hour, we're not going to get through much of this, but I do want to be able to have the proponent introduce the project from the applicant. Also, hear any staff report information. John, if you can give an overview from your perspective. And I do want to be able to I might truncate this a little bit. I do want to be able to have members of the public provide any additional information that they'd like to either add to the outline or comment on. Now, we're not necessarily going to be engaging in any discussion for that, but I think it's important up front to be able to open it up and hear from the public on some of the areas of the outline itself.
Mr. DeYoung?
Ms. Marlowe, please.
I will be abstaining from this discussion and this vote as an abutter. So I will be putting myself on mute and listening to the discussion.
Very well, understood. Mr. Chairman, am I missing anything before we introduce the applicant and have him go through a brief overview?
Nope, I think that's great. And to your point, if we can get through the overview and the initial comments, I think that's a good place to give everybody a flavor of where things stand, and then we can get into the depth of the conversation, as well as the initial public input. I think that's a great place for tonight.
All righty, so I believe this is Mr. Nation and Mr. Marquardt.
That's correct. Ron Nation here, 43 Smith Road. Joe Marquardt and Larry Green Lar is with us, and he's the landscape architect. Joe Marquardt's the engineer. I'm not sure who's better to introduce this. Would be probably Joe.
Sure.
Or myself, but I can fill in if you miss anything.
Very good. Joe?
Thanks, Joe.
Oh, well, the parcel we're talking about is 0 Hayden Row. Unfortunately, has not been assigned a house number yet. We are Upper Hayden Row, the south end. If you were coming from Milford, you crest the hill, College Street is on your right. That field just after College Street to the right, the billboards that you see off in the distance, that's our parcel. It's almost 31 acres, 30.97 acres approximately. You have the meadow. A large chunk of the site is natural woodlands. It's actually a very attractive piece. Rises up very gently from Hayden Row easterly towards the center of the parcel, then drops back down to Beaver Brook, which is, for all intents and purposes, the easterly boundary line. The residents along College Street bound us on the south, Hayden Row on the west, and then land from the town of Hopkinton and the Cornell family on the north side. There are extensive wetlands throughout the site. Ron has gone ahead and met with the Conservation Commission filed an ANORAD and received an ORAD, which locks in the wetlands delineations. The consultant for the commission went through with our people and agreed on the wetlands edge. So there is no doubt as to the status of those wetlands and where they sit. We put together both the traditional grid plan, and then Larry put together the plan that John has shared with us here. We're coming in, accessing from Hayden Row Street down near College Street. We have chosen a point where the wetlands, quite frankly, is the narrowest. The Conservation Commission obviously has a great many standards. Chief among that is to reduce the impacts to the wetlands wherever possible. That is the chief reason for the location of the road. But it does allow us to access the areas, the upland areas on the site, the stuff that is high and dry, if you will. On that plan, we've got a 40-foot right-of-way. We've got 18-foot travel way on that sketch plan that you see there. We are proposing municipal water connection and on-site private septic systems. So town water, private septic systems. The open space, there is a trail network. It offers a couple of opportunities to link our project to town land. But the open space, there is no use beyond passive recreation or conservation for the open space parcels that are around the perimeter of the house lots. We believe that the plan that you see there, and I hope through all our discussions it will bear it out, that we're in line with the standards outlined in the bylaw. Our project will not cause unreasonable traffic levels in the site or in the surrounding area. The roadway widths and configurations you can see are gentle. There are no sharp corners, no blind curves. It should provide safe emergency vehicle access, and it preserves the natural features, the woodlands and the wetlands. We have no outstanding historical features or structures to preserve, but we do our best to maintain the natural woodlands and the character out there in the area. That is a very brief outline of where the project's at. Be happy to answer any other questions, or if I missed anything, Larry and Ron can certainly weigh in and put us back on the rails.
I think Joe did a great job. The only thing I'd add is that as part of this, we are preserving that kind of historic patch right on Hayden Row as an aesthetic beauty.
I mean, that patch actually has some of the most gorgeous wildflowers growing there in summer. So I'm glad to hear. So is that the patch that is going to get preserved?
Yes,
correct.
Okay, thank you.
Got it. Ron, anything else that you want to add to Larry and Joe's comments?
No, I don't think so. It's the stream flows from north to south. East side of the stream is in effect, like Joe says, the boundary, and it flows into a farm pond, an existing farm pond. So the trail opportunities are many. It can connect up to College Rock. It can connect up to the trail over on off of Granite Street. There's a lot of opportunities on the trails. So I think it's good that we make sure we do a good job on the trails.
Yeah. And
it preserves the field out front, but that leads up to the billboards, and all of the activity is out, beyond the tree line that you drive by. So the houses won't be sitting on Hayden Row Street. They'll be tucked way out back. Probably closest house will be 500 or 600 feet from Hayden Row.
Excellent. Thank you. And the plan that we're looking at right here, just so I'm clear, this is the open space and landscape preservation development. That's the plan that is in front of us.
Right. Yes.
Is there a conventional subdivision plan that's been submitted, or no? This is it.
You had submitted a proof plan, I think, no?
Yeah, there is a traditional concept plan in the package.
Okay.
Back around to Hayden Row in a couple of different locations.
Got it. Right. But this is the one that we're looking at here, the proposal here.
Yeah, that's where we prefer to end up.
Okay. Mr. Gelsich?
All right, so this is an open space and landscape preservation development special permit. So they have submitted, as we just covered, a conventional plan and this OSLPD plan. The site is 32.97 acres. There is some wetlands on it that's generally wooded. It is within the Residence B district, so that is allowed for OSLPD developments. It's also in the Water Resources Protection Overlay District, so they may need to get a special permit from the ZBA for that. The proposal has 22.4 acres preserved as open space, which is approximately 67% of the property. And the open space right now is set to be owned by the HOA. I'm also, as part of this, going to go over the decision criteria so everyone's aware of it. And then, Mr. Chair, if you'd like, I could also give my comments related to the decision criteria at this time, or I could hold off and do it at some other time.
You know what, I think just from a timing perspective, John, because I'd like to get the feedback from the public here initially, maybe just kind of initially talk about the decision criteria without necessarily getting the comments right now, because we're going to have to revisit those anyway.
All right. If that's the case, then I probably would want to hold off, just because the decision criteria in this refers back to a lot of the points within the zoning, so it's not super clear to just read it off.
Yeah.
So if that's okay, I'll just hold off on that. But I will make some comments about the actual submitted plans. So the open space is required to have less than 50% or less of the area designated as wetland. And it appears, so there was some discrepancy on the application. I hope the applicant can clear this up. The proposed open space acreage listed is 22.4 acres with 13.15 acres of wetlands within the open space, which is 58.7%. But then there's also a listing of 12.53 acres of wetlands on site. So it seems like there's less wetland on site than there is within the open space. So that's a little confusing, because I don't think one of those numbers is correct unless I'm mistaken. But either way, even if it was the 12.53 acres of wetland within the open space, it's still over the 50%. So that is a concern, since you can't have more than 50% of the open space designated as wetlands. Additionally, the conventional plan shows 2 wetland crossings, and Beta called this out in their letter. That's not a problem per se, but as you can see on the concept plan, there's only 1 wetland crossing. So you have a conventional that's got to get approval for 2 wetland crossings, whereas the OSLPD only needs 1. So it's really a question of, can that conventional be built without an additional approval for the wetland crossing? And also, I would like to see some information on the plan. Usually we ask for like a zoning table, a zoning conformance table for each lot and how it conforms to the intensity regulations. It's just a little easy way to make sure that everything is conforming. And those are my comments, and I can go into the decision criteria at the next meeting.
I had one question, if I could, through you, Mr. Chair.
Please, Mary.
I think I remember, John, in your comments that the conventional plan also you couldn't validate that the lots conformed.
If that's the case, yeah.
So just as a process point, the conventional plan has to pass muster first before we move on to this.
So I don't see
No.
that in my notes, and I don't necessarily remember. I
There's,
think it may have.
I'll find it. I'm sorry. I should have had it in front of me.
There's 2 points. In the bullets of my comments, they're right next to each other. It's requesting a zoning conformance table to show how each lot conforms, and then the question about the conventional plan that doesn't show 2 wetland crossings.
Yeah.
Go ahead and go forward, because I'll look for it if I still have the question.
Yeah, I mean, Muriel, that's a good point, fair point. We'll have to look at the conventional plan. Right now, I thought just given the timing here is to kind of give us opportunity to see what the concept is, what they're looking to do, and then we're going to have to kind of dig down into both the conventional plan and the proposed plan. Thank you, John. Anything else on from a comment standpoint?
Not at this time.
All right, awesome. The next third is consultant review. Phil, you've been a trooper if you're still on.
Yeah, no, I'm here. You guys are very entertaining. And Ron, you've always picked the good sites here. What's up with this? Anyway,
we don't have an approval yet.
So along with the things that John mentioned about the wetland crossing, the soils are pretty poor, at least rated by NRCS. So we would like to see maybe some tests to make sure that you can put all those septic systems out there, and also I think the plan, well, this plan, the subdivision plan, is going to require a significant wetland replication area if it's going to be approved. So I'm not sure where that might be or whatever. So, but I think it's also going to be very difficult to get approved. And then also, I think there should at least be some areas designated or at least thought out where stormwater management facilities might be, because at least your concept plan shows it pretty tight, and then you're surrounded by wetlands. So just wanted to make sure that those things could be accommodated in your design. That's about it.
Gonna make it happen, Phil.
All right. So any questions for Phil on the beta overview? And that was part of the packet, I think. All right. The next item here is, and this might be a little bit premature, but scheduling a site walk on this particular property. Gary, John, I don't know if we want to try to, identify some time now to be able to do that here over the next couple of weeks. We typically look at a Saturday morning oftentimes to do that. That seems to be pretty amenable to members of the public as well as the applicant and other board members, but I'll leave it open.
Yeah, I think that it's worth getting scheduled, particularly before the weather gets notably colder.
Yeah,
I know there's a preference, I think, at least from one of our board members, to go a little bit later, like 9:30 instead of 9. Sundar?
Tennis, after all, tennis.
No, you're muted. Maybe outdoor tennis season is over for the year. I'm not
No,
sure.
no. It is not over. Cold doesn't bother me. 9:30 would be really nice. Thank you, Gary.
This coming Saturday?
Definite.
So that's, I believe, the 7th of November, or
Okay.
the following is the 14th.
I cannot do the 7th, but I can do the 14th.
I can do either one.
Either one for me.
I can do either one.
Good either way. So if the 14th works for everybody, and Mr. Nation, Mr. Marquidant, we want to kind of book that one.
7th?
No, the 14th.
14th? Sure.
Yeah. All right, the 14th at 9:30 a.m. We could meet. Is there a particular place to meet, Joe or Ron? Would we park on College there and then,
There's not much room on College. I would suggest the east side of Hayden Row. You can
Yeah.
park on the side of the road.
that's a good point.
That makes sense.
Excuse me. This is Mary Jane Conley. You can park in front of the barn if you'd like to.
Okay, thank you, Mary Jane. Could you just state your address just for the record?
Oh, 261 Hayden Rose Street.
It's where the big red barn is.
It says Connolly.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We'll do that on the 14th. Any other questions regarding the site walk? Got that booked. Right now, I'd like to first open up to members of the planning board for any other discussion or items for discussion that are not captured in the current outline.
Through the chair.
Okay.
Mr. Nation outlined a pretty interesting trail system. I think we could add actually a discussion for trails.
I like that idea. I wonder if it would just fall under 6.1 maybe, or 6.6 sidewalks, trails. Let's go 6.6. Put trails.
6.6 it is.
6.6 it is. Got it. Anything else from board members? All right. If none, I will open it up to the public. So again,
Sure.
I'm sorry, Dave.
I thought we were just doing adding items to the agenda.
Yes.
I didn't realize you were asking the board for general comments.
No, I'm just asking for items on the agenda right now.
Oh, okay, sorry. Right.
Yeah. But I will allow the members of the public to provide some general comments if they're like up front, and any additional discussion topics that we should add. As I mentioned earlier, not really to engage here at this point. We definitely want to get your feedback and incorporate that feedback as we go forward through the outline itself. So members of the public, feel free to either raise the hand. I don't see it, but just state your name and your address, and John will let it in.
So Bjorn was the first one to raise their hand.
Yeah, hi, this is Bjorn Hansen, 11 Carl Street. I got 2 questions. So in terms of the project, I know it's kind of early in the project stage, but in terms of the project completion time, what are we looking for in terms of 9 units? And second thing is the project also going to install sidewalks from Carl Street up to Granite? Those are my 2 biggest concerns.
All right. Sidewalks, we'll definitely incorporate that into, I think that's number 6.6, and we'll talk about that as part of the agenda. And Bjorn, I'm sorry, the first part of your question, was it about the timing of the?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, so apparently it's going to be 9 units going in. What is the completion time for those 9 units? A year, 3 years, 4 years?
We probably, I would say no more than 3 years from start to finish.
All right.
John, next who's got their hand up?
Maury Gasser was next.
Maury, please, the floor is yours.
Hi, this is Maury Gasser, 28 South Mill Street. Since the land will be retained by the HOA, I assume there's going to be a conservation restriction on it. So is the plan to allow public access to the property?
I believe so, Maury.
Okay.
Maury, that's a great background you got going on there.
I wish I was there.
Yeah.
Very good. Does that answer your question, Mr. Gasser?
Yes, it does. That's the only question I have.
Very good. Thank you. John, next.
Wayne Eddy.
Hey, Wayne. Wayne, the floor is yours. You might be on mute.
How's that?
Better.
All right. Wayne Eddy, I live at 5 College Street. The road coming in to the subdevelopment, it encroaches on that 100-foot buffer. So I wanted just to open that up for discussion next time. The other concern that I have is that wetland area where the roadway cuts through. And I'm just concerned about what happens to, how does that water get displaced and how could that possibly impact water on my property, which it comes right up to it. It's a very saturated area, especially in the springtime. I don't know when that property was actually walked initially, but it's, the field and back that's considered the buffer zone now gets very saturated with water. So I'm worried about the impact of the water there.
Fair point, and I think I'll make a note of it. Looks like it's been captured under 6.2, stormwater management. We might have to expand that just to make sure we're covering, the water flow and the potential impact on abutters for that.
Okay.
Very good. Anything else, Wayne?
No, that's all I have for now.
Good point. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Next member of the public with a comment or something want to add to the outline. John?
I don't see any more hands, Mr. Chair.
All right.
Oh, Chief has.
Chief.
Well, Chief, okay, I've got your email. We'll take it now. The floor is yours.
I think just to add to the email, so there's a single access to this development. That's a pretty long road. And I think I noticed in the conventional plan that it showed, and I'm recalling this, that it showed that it had a loop that came back out onto Hayden Row. And just in light of tonight's discussion, it might be a good topic, when you have the ability to have a road come in from another direction or not, or whether we, open space and 1,000-foot dead end road, is that what we're looking for? Maybe that's a good time to just have that discussion.
That's a fair point. I'm going to add that to the agenda, probably 6.1, Chief, where it's vehicle, traffic, and truck flow.
Yeah, and I don't know if I'm going to make the 16th, so I just figured I'd throw it out at you right now. So that's all. I'm panicking at your schedule.
Fair enough.
So through the chair, we've been trying to talk about waivers first. Is there a list of waivers that we could discuss going forward?
I mean, there are a couple of waivers. I'm not sure I'm prepared to kind of go through them right now, John. I think you've outlined a couple.
And I'm just wondering if we should add that as the first item to our detailed item list to go over waivers. It seems like that's what we've been doing.
Yeah, you know what? That's not a bad idea, and it's not on the original outline, Dave. But
I thought it was number 7. Discuss vote on waivers.
The waivers, yeah, it is there. So
that after the detail.
Yes.
Yes.
We've been trying
number 7.
I deferred to our Mr. Sandell, but I think we've been trying to do that before we get into the detailed discussion, correct?
Yeah, thus far it's been helpful to do that.
Why don't we move that up in front of 6, and that way.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, just to clarify, what we did previously that worked well is we didn't vote on them yet, but we actually at least had some brief discussion, because I think that helps set some context as to what we should be evaluating. I don't think we should vote on them, because how can we vote on them if we haven't heard the broader discussion through the hearing process? But it is certainly helpful to acknowledge and have a preliminary discussion around them.
So maybe a copy and paste instead of a cut and paste.
I was going to say, maybe we'll discuss the waivers before we get into 6, but not necessarily vote on those. We can keep the vote aspect right where it's at. Number 7.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right. Any other questions on areas 1 through 5 at this point? Mr. Chairman, I think it's probably a decent place to pause, given where we're at.
Can I
So,
just ask one burning general question?
yes.
A question for the applicant, is this going to be, the stormwater, is it going to be catch basins and underground, or will they be looking at an alternative approach?
I believe that we'll have catch basins and the site's very flat and but we do plan to have as much I don't know. Joe mentioned different detention basins that maybe have a wet section as well as a dry section. I'm not sure what that means, but some kind of a more environmentally friendly than the normal when you have underground, catch basins and manholes. Joe, I don't know if you could.
No, that's probably good for now, Ron. I was just looking for some feedback about where you were thinking on this. Thanks.
Yeah, I think it's too flat for the swales.
Got it. Does that help, Dave?
Yes, it does. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gelsich, do we have time on the next agenda meeting for the applicant?
So, Mr. Chair, I can take that question. I think we are full for the 16th.
Okay.
And I would propose that we actually continue to our next hearing meeting, which would be on December 7th. I realize that's a ways out, but I guess two thoughts. Number one is let's make sure that we put a decent amount of time towards this. And then secondly, I guess my ask for the applicant would be, given that there's a few things that I think they're going to need to work through, namely the difference in wetland crossings and the percentage of conservation land that's wet. I think that we're going to want to see some progress on addressing those prior to the next hearing.
So can we work that out? Well, hopefully we can work some of that out administratively with John. Or
yes, yeah, absolutely. That's kind of what I'm asking. Is that I think there's a lot of progress you can make on those issues prior to that next hearing, which hopefully will, or that next date, which hopefully will help things move along a little bit easier.
Okay, great.
Mr. Chair, for the applicant, I found John's comment, just if we get there, rather than, costing time. I found it here. It was the proposed dimensions of each lot on the OSLPD plan, as they are, it's unclear what the proposed dimensions of each lot in the OSLPD are, as they are not shown on the submitted plan. Therefore, conformance to the required lot dimensions is unable to be confirmed. So just want to make sure that we don't end up on December 7th with that same question.
Excuse me 1 second, Muriel, through the chair. Where do you find that comment?
So in the meeting outline, number 6, it's the regulatory review, 6.2 regulatory review.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So, Mr. Chair, I think that speaks to my other comment of a zoning conformance table on the plan showing the conformance of each lot would be helpful.
Yep.
Try to.
I've got that one down.
All right. So then we've got two things set next for the applicant here. Next is a site walk on November 14th at 9:30 a.m. And then the second is they are on the agenda for December 7th, correct? Mr. Chair? Yes.
Yes, but we just need to take a vote on continuing it to the 7th.
Very good. I will entertain a motion to continue the public hearing.
Nice, Dave.
0 Hayden Road.
So moved.
Move. Second. Any discussion? All right.
Can we hear an amen?
Roll call vote. Fran Dion, yes. Deb?
Deborah Feinberg, yes.
Yeah. Gary?
Prindle, yes.
Gary Trindle, yes. Sundar?
Yes. Sundar, yes.
Yes. Rob Benson?
Rob Benson, yes.
Excellent. Mary Larson Marlowe?
She is abstaining.
Oh, she's abstaining, that's
She
right. I'm
recused
sorry.
herself.
Yes, I saw it on mute. Jane Moran?
Jane Moran, yes.
Good. Dave Paul?
Dave Paul, yes.
Dave Paul and Muriel Kramer.
Muriel Kramer, yes.
Very good. Mr. Chairman, I turn the floor back over to you.
All right. Last thing to do on the agenda is I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Dave?
Yeah, discussion.
Process, point of order, you got a question, anything? Nothing you want to talk about now?
Sidewalks, let's talk sidewalks.
Utilities? All right, so we have a motion, we have a second, roll call vote, Gary Trendle, yes. Rob?
Rob Benson, yes.
Muriel?
Muriel Kramer, yes.
Jane?
Jane Moran, yes.
Dave?
Dave Paul, yes.
Mary?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Deb?
Deborah Feinberg, yes.
Sundar?
Sundar Sivaraman, yes.
And Fran?
Fran Dion, yes.
All right. Thank you all. And thanks in particular to Rob and Fran for taking some hearings here. I very much appreciate it. But everyone have a good night. And if you haven't already voted, vote tomorrow.
Amen.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, everyone.
Take
Have a
care.
good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night. Good night.
Thank you.
I don't know why.
Thanks, Phil.